Chapter 2261. The Heaven Responding Pill auctioned in the Heavenly Pivot Hall required an astronomical amount of merit point. Even with the wealth of the Hunyuan Heaven Realm's experts, they could afford it. However, there were many experts from the ancient god world and large families and factions in the Yuan Tiangong. How could the Hunyuan Heaven Realm's experts have a chance to obtain it? Cultivators and cultivators pursued the supreme peak. Compared to the supreme great Tao, nothing else was important. Besides, Su Fang and the Hunyuan Heaven Realm's various factions, apart from the Luo clan's vassal factions, the Big Dipper sect and Sanskrit, they did not have any deep hatred for the other factions. In order to obtain a chance to improve their cultivation, these experts from various factions put aside their pride and friendship. As a result, these experts could only thicken their faces and come to Su Fang to ask for the pills. After welcoming all the experts into the main hall of the celestial realm, Su Fang revealed a troubled expression after hearing the intentions of the experts. The Yin clan's patriarch said in a low voice, "Saint Su Fang, do you have any concerns?" Su Fang was very surprised to hear the Yin clan's patriarch address him as such. "Then I'll be frank with you." Su Fang sighed, looking very troubled. "I do have some heaven-responding pills, and I'm cooperating with the Duanmu Divine Clan to refine more heaven-responding pills. Previously, I wanted to be on good terms with all of you, but all of you were instigated by despicable people to isolate the heaven realm and even harbor enmity towards us. If I give all of you the heaven-responding pill, and all of you become stronger in the future, then wouldn't I be digging my own grave? However, if I don't give you the heaven-responding pills, I'll definitely offend all of you. To take them or not to take them, I'm really in a dilemma." Su Fang's words made the dozen or so Hunyuan Heaven Realm experts feel very embarrassed. At the same time, these powerhouses were also shocked. Su Fang was able to continuously refine heaven-responding pills. Just the heaven-responding pills alone could befriend many powerhouses and bring in many strong reinforcements for the heaven realm. What's more, Su Fang was a peerless genius favored by the imperial people. Offending such a genius out of consideration for the Luo clan and Sanskrit was not worth it. The patriarch of the Yin tribe said in a deep voice, "The saint of Su Fang is overthinking. If you can sell the heaven-responding pill to my tribe, I swear to the heavenly law that not only will I never be your enemy, but my tribe will also owe you a favor. As long as there is a chance, we will repay it." The other experts nodded in agreement. Su Fang smiled embarrassedly and said, "Since everyone says so, I'm relieved." Swish. Swish. Su Fang rolled out a dozen or so responding to heaven pills, which were wrapped in Xian Guang and delivered to the dozen or so masters. "This heaven-responding pill is a gift from me to all of you. Take it as a token of my sincerity. However, if you want to get the heaven-responding pill from me in the future, you will have to exchange it for various resources and spirit items according to the auction price in the Yuan Tiangong." The patriarch of the Yin tribe and the other powerhouses were all overjoyed. At the same time, they were also shocked by Su Fang's generosity. A heaven-responding pill could be auctioned for nearly 100,000 merit points in the Yuan Tiangong. Su Fang was so generous that everyone couldn't help but be impressed. Following that, Su Fang took out a few middle-grade yin-yang true pole pills and gave them to the powerhouses present. This was Su Fang's true motive. Although the heaven-responding pill was valuable, it could only be used by Tao integration cultivators and above. Ordinary gods could not afford it. Moreover, the heaven-responding pill was not like the divine essence pill. After taking too many pills, it would lose its medicinal effect. In addition, it was limited by the materials, so it was impossible to mass-produce it. Thus, Su Fang used the heaven-responding pill to improve the relationship between the various powers. The yin-yang true pole pill was used to make long-term transactions. Only then could the heaven domain develop in the long run. Following that, the dozen or so powerhouses took out various resources and spirit items to exchange for the heaven-responding pill with Su Fang. It was not that these powerhouses had no way of obtaining merit points, but Su Fang only used cultivation resources and spirit items to exchange for the heaven-responding pill so as to prevent others from taking advantage of them. Su Fang did not have many heaven-responding pills, so the dozen or so powerhouses exchanged all of them for a huge amount of resources and spirit items. Now, Su Fang's wealth skyrocketed. Although it could not be compared to those powerful powers, it could be considered a small tycoon. Moreover, with the help of the heaven-responding pill, Su Fang completely resolved the situation of the heaven domain being isolated. The yin-yang true pole pill also began to be sold in large quantities, becoming a stable source of income for the heaven domain. When the powerhouses of the other powers who came late heard that Su Fang had given the Yin clan and other powerhouses a heaven-responding pill for free, they all regretted it. The next day, they all visited Su Fang to express their goodwill. Sanskrit and the Big Dipper sect naturally did not have the face to visit them. They could only watch the heaven domain rise in the Hunyuan heaven domain. Su Fang had left behind a large portion of his resources in the celestial world for Shu Yunkong to recruit. The generous conditions he offered made countless experts green with envy. It also made those experts who had betrayed the celestial world feel regret. After the previous lesson, the newly recruited powerhouses who received the benefits of Su Fangda not only had to swear to the heavens, but Su Fang also planted seal seeds in their bodies to prevent them from being poached again. As for the powerhouses recruited by Su Fang after he left, Fan Ming was responsible for planting the seal seed. Fan Ming had the strength of an area master. Although he was not strong enough to guard the heaven domain, it was more than enough to deal with the recruited powerhouses. Su Fang discovered a more serious problem, which was that he still had too few true powerhouses under his command. Fan Ming was the only area master powerhouse, let alone an overgod powerhouse. Moreover, Fan Ming was not Su Fang's true subordinate. However, it was too difficult to recruit powerhouses above the area master level as subordinate. Area master powerhouses could be said to be the overlords of a starfield in the myriad heavens. How could they easily become someone's slave? Su Fang secretly calculated, in the future, I have to think of a way to subdue area master powerhouses. When the life-bound magic treasure is successfully nurtured, I have to suppress even more puppet powerhouses. After completely resolving the matter in the heaven domain, Su Fang and Xuanxin were finally relieved. They left the heaven domain with peace of mind and returned to the Yuan Tiangong. Su Fang distributed a large amount of resources to Xianlingzi, Qingyu, Bai Ling, and the Big Goblin. Then, he bid farewell to Xuanxin and went straight to the Earth Realm Dojo through the spatial array. Not long after he arrived at the Earth Realm Dojo, Buzz, the son of Saint Token in his body vibrated. As soon as he took out the token, the voice of an Yuan Tiangong powerhouse came from it. Son of Saint Su Fang, the Saint Temple that was specially built for you has been completed. You can move in at any time. Saint Temple? Su Fang was shocked and stunned. He did not expect that the Yuan Tiangong powerhouse would specially build a Saint Temple for him. The Saint Temple is located in the deepest part of the Yuan Tiangong, above the Heavenly Realm Dojo. The spatial array cannot reach there. When the time comes, you just need to activate the token, and someone will take you to the Saint Temple. Su Fang originally thought that the white-robed powerhouse of the imperial people had conferred him the title of Son of Saint. In the future, he would definitely cultivate in the heavenly realm. He did not expect that it would be in the deepest part of the Yuan Tiangong, which was even higher than the heavenly realm dojo. He pondered for a long time. The peerless powerhouse of the imperial people conferred me the title of Son of the Yuan Tiangong. It seems that he values me and bestows me with great benefits, but in fact there are pros and cons. Becoming the Yuan Tiangong Son of the Saint has made me the target of many geniuses. It forces me to improve my strength as soon as possible. Otherwise, I will not be able to keep my position as the son of saint, and I will face unprecedented challenges. Furthermore, there must be a reason why the peerless powerhouse of the imperial people made such a hasty decision. If I'm not mistaken, the plan to enter the celestial mountain should be brought forward. Only with challenges will I be motivated. I can make use of this identity and the cultivation environment of the Saint Temple to quickly improve my strength. Then, I will enter the Palace of Advent and find a way to rescue Senior. Next, Su Fang forged the Heaven's Response Pill and Yin Yang True Polarity Pill in the temporal array of the Earthly Realm Dojo. About 500 years had passed, and 5,000 years had passed in the temporal array. Su Fang entered the Dubhe Vault and exchanged the Heaven's Response Pill and Yin Yang True Polarity Pill for merit point. The Dubhe Vault could not exchange the Heaven's Response Pill according to the auction price, so it gave Su Fang 5,000 merit points each. Su Fang had no choice but to use his merit points to exchange for spirit items that were almost impossible to find in the outside world. He had to exchange all the Heaven's Response Pill and Yin Yang True Polarity Pill in his possession for merit point. Together with the remaining merit points, Su Fang suddenly had more than 900,000 merit point. However, Su Fang's merit points were easy to come by and easy to spend. After a round of shopping in the Dubhe Vault, he exchanged the merit points in his possession for the cultivation of the Yang Meridian, the World Tree, and various spirit items of heaven and earth, including spirit items like the prehistoric inflammation that was born in the primordial world. When Su Fang walked out of the Dubhe Vault, he was once again poor. After returning to the Earthly Realm Dojo, Su Fang contacted Xuanxin, Goddess Luo, Xian Lingzi, and the others, informing them that he had gone to the Saint Temple. Then, he sent a message through the Saint Token. "I am going to the Saint Temple. Please send someone to pick me up." There was soon a response from the token. "Saint, please wait patiently for a few days." 10 days later, an illusory figure appeared in the void outside Su Fang's dojo. This was the illusory figure of an incomparably tall palace. It was extremely majestic, and it was extremely similar to the Yuan Tiangong. However, it was many times smaller than the Yuan Tiangong. The illusory figure quickly became real, and finally, it turned into a real palace. It exuded a golden Xian Guang, and it exuded a supreme aura. Anyone who saw it would feel small and insignificant, and they could not help but want to kneel down and worship it. The Saint Temple. Su Fang looked at the floating palace in the air, and his heart was filled with shock. The purple aura spirit in his body was also trembling with excitement. The Sanctum of Sages was actually a destinable god artifact. Su Fang activated his Perfection Divine Artifact ability, and after sensing it, he discovered that the Saint Temple was not a Fortune Divine Artifact like the Brahma Saint Tower. Instead, it was born in the Yuan Tiangong, and then created by a supreme expert through the use of a divine ability. It was slightly inferior to a Fortune Divine Artifact in the real world, but it was far superior to a half-Fortune Divine Artifact. Chapter 2262. What is that? Why is it in the Earth Realm? The sudden appearance of a palace in the Earth Realm shocked the 100 geniuses and 3 sovereigns of the Earth Realm Dojo. They quickly flew over to Su Fang's dojo, and they stared at the Sanctum of Sages in awe. Stairs extended from the entrance of the palace, and the boundary of the eldritch world automatically separated. The stairs extended all the way to the square in front of Su Fang's palace. Many white-robed deities appeared from the palace and stood on both sides of the wide stairs. Each deity was at the early stage of the Tao integration realm, and there were more than 1,000 of them. An ordinary-looking bald elder flew out of the palace and came to the square. He saluted Su Fang and said, "Welcome, Saint Su Fang." 1,000 white-robed deities also saluted and said in unison, "Welcome, Saint." Su Fang saluted and said, "Lord Song Yanhai, why are you here?" It turned out that this bald elder was Song Yanhai, who had once presided over the Divine Disciple Tournament in the Azure Dome star field. Song Yanhai said politely, "I am now the leader of the guards of Su Fang's saint. You only need to call me by my name. These 1,000 Tao integration experts are the guards of the Inceptive Sage. As long as the Inceptive Sage is the master of the Sanctum of Sages, our duty is to protect the Inceptive Sage." Leader of the guards? 1,000 Tao integration realm experts as guards? Su Fang was shocked. He didn't expect this. The Yuan Tiangong had sent a Lord God and 1,000 Tao integration realm experts to protect him. Song Yanhai wasn't an ordinary Lord God. He was an upper-rank Lord God who was even more powerful than Wu Jixing and Mo Tiangong. He was only slightly weaker than the big-headed ancestor of the Yin clan. 1,000 Tao integration stage bodyguards. Just how astonishing was this force? O nine oin the myriad worlds, except for the powerful forces with emperors and the ancient god clans, they could defeat almost all the other forces. Su Fang was shocked. Master Song Yanhai, you don't need so many bodyguards in Yuan Tiangong, do you? Azure Flame Sea said. Saint's son might not know this, but I and these 1,000 Tao integration masters will not only protect Saint's son within Primordius Heavenly Palace, but if Saint's son goes to any dangerous lands, danger zones, or desolate lands, we will also protect Saint's son's safety. Of course, if we make a move during the trial, it will be considered a failure. Su Fang smiled embarrassedly. Where would he go to train in the future? What was the point of bringing so many experts with him? The Holy Sun probably doesn't know that the demon race, the big goblin, the resurrected powerhouses, and many evil races that were previously hidden in the darkness have all appeared. Although the heavens have not yet reached the point of losing control, it is already in chaos. Song Yanhai saw through Su Fang's thoughts and said solemnly. He continued, unlike in the past, the resurrected powerhouses have formed a huge force and are targeting the Yuan Tiangong geniuses to assassinate them. Not only the resurrected powerhouses but also the demon race, the evil forces, and the experts from the dark world. In the past few years, more than 300 Yuan Tiangong geniuses who accepted missions and went out to train have died in sneak attacks and assassinations. Among them were 3 geniuses from Earth Realm dojos. There are even various evil forces that have infiltrated the Hunyuan Heaven Realm and Yuan Tiangong. The 10 geniuses from Yuan Tiangong's Heavenly Realm dojos are the targets of the resurrected powerhouses and the demon race. Su Fang's Holy Son is ranked first. How can the higher-ups of Yuan Tiangong not send experts to protect you? Su Fang's heart sank. He did not expect the situation in the heavens to be so serious. Among the basic missions given to the 4 realm dojos in the Yuan Tiangong 100,000-year minor competition and the million-year grand competition, besides some missions to infiltrate the Yuan Tiangong, there were many missions that required one to leave the Yuan Tiangong and go to dangerous places, wastelands, and even places like the Divine Palace of Advent. With so many guards, it would indeed be much less troublesome. Song Yanhai smiled and said, It has only been a short time since we parted ways in Rainbow Wilderness City, but the Holy Sun already has such strength and status. Even this old man has to be your guard. The world is unpredictable. This old man is deeply moved. Su Fang was also deeply moved. When he was in the Blue Dome star field, Su Fang was just a prodigy with a reputation that was limited to a star field. But Song Yanhai was a supreme expert. Now, Su Fang was strong enough to fight against an ordinary overgod. He also had the identity of the Yuan Tiangong's Holy Son, and Song Yanhai had become his guard captain. Su Fang clasped his fists and said, I will have to trouble you in the future. Song Yanhai chuckled and said, Being able to stay by the Holy Sun's side is a benefit that many overgods can't get. In order to enter the Sanctum of Sages, this old man spent a lot of effort and even took out an extremely precious half-creation divine artifact. Only then did I qualify to become the Holy Sun's guard captain. Song Yen Hai continued to explain. Only then did Su Fang understand that to become the guard captain of the Sanctum of Sages, including the 1000 Tao integration experts, it took a lot of effort. After entering the Sanctum of Sages, one would have a cultivation environment that other overgods could not have. Moreover, the treatment was very good and it was very comfortable. More importantly, the heaven-responding pill. Although there were heaven-responding pills being auctioned in the Alpha Hall, they were all ordinary heaven-responding pills and were very difficult to obtain. Su Fang gave Xing Wuji and Mo Tiangong a spirit heaven-responding pill each. This made all the overgods, including Song Yen Hai, green with envy. Song Yen Hai was even more regretful. His relationship with Su Fang was not as good as Xing Wuji and Mo Tiangong. Ever since the gods' battle in the Blue Dome star field, he rarely contacted Su Fang. If he had maintained his relationship with Su Fang, he would not have to worry about not being able to get the heaven-responding pill. Now that there was a chance to get close to Su Fang again, Song Yen Hai naturally did not want to miss it. He used all his means and finally got what he wanted. Song Yen Hai smiled and said, "Holy Prince Su Fang, please enter the Sanctum of Sages." Su Fang stepped onto the stairs, and the Holy Prince token in the depths of his body suddenly buzzed, forming an extremely subtle connection with the Sanctum of Sages. At the same time, Su Fang could clearly sense that through the Holy Prince token, he could easily control the Sanctum of Sages. Song Yen Hai followed closely behind Su Fang and 1000 Tao integration stage experts into the Sanctum of Sages. The Sanctum of Sages quickly turned from corporeal to nothingness and finally disappeared from the Earth Realm Dojo. To have a destinable divine artifact as his palace and 1000 Tao integration stage experts as his guards, this treatment is really incomparable. The Earth Realm geniuses were all envious. The status of the Earth Realm Dojo's geniuses was second only to the Heaven Realm geniuses. Even among the Yuan Tiangong, they were considered top-notch. However, compared to Su Fang, he was nothing. There was simply no way to compare. Even the 3 Earth Realm dojos couldn't help but sigh, especially the sovereign who replaced Han Ji after Han Ji suppressed him. He sighed and said, "Han Ji is really stupid. To think that he would bully such a peerless genius just for some benefits from the Luo tribe. He really doesn't know how to write the word death." Sanctum of Sages. With the help of the Holy Prince token, Su Fang was able to sense every corner of the Sanctum of Sages. In the Sanctum of Sages, other than the main palace, there were 1000 sub-palaces. Song Yen Hai lived in one of the sub-palaces, while the other 1000 Tao integration stage experts lived in another sub-palace. Of course, the sub-palaces weren't as simple as palaces. They were worlds of their own, and within them, there were dojos and palaces for the experts to cultivate. Within the Sanctum of Sages, there were naturally formed heavenly scars that intertwined to form a formation that could continuously absorb spiritual energy, world energy, and even primordial chaos chi from the outside world. As such, cultivating in the Sanctum of Sages was 100 times faster than the Earth Realm dojos. Even the Heaven Realm dojos paled in comparison. What made Su Fang especially exclaim in admiration was that the world within each of the branch halls had been created into various different cultivation environments. There was a barren desert, an ocean that stretched as far as the eye could see, a world of lightning where lightning intersected, and even the demon world and devil world where demons and devils lived. Almost all of the environments that could be found in the Sanctum of Sages could be found in the Sanctum of Sages. What excited Su Fang the most was a sub-palace known as the Palace of Spring and Autumn. It was a world formed by a time artifact, and it was divided into different regions where the flow of time varied from 10 times to 100 times. What Su Fang lacked the most at the moment was time. With such a sub-palace, the speed of his cultivation would definitely increase exponentially. However, cultivating in the Palace of Spring and Autumn wasn't without restrictions. If one's cultivation wasn't sufficient, cultivating in the palace of spring and autumn for an extended period of time would result in a huge conflict between the flow of time and the flow of time. The sanctum of sages wasn't just a place for cultivation, it also possessed powerful defensive capabilities. Su Fang estimated that if the sanctum of sages was activated to its limits, it could even withstand a blow from a Zun realm expert. Other than that, there was another use for the sanctum of sages. As the sanctum of sages was born in the Yuan Tiangong, it was a destinable divine artifact created by an unparalleled expert. Thus, within the Yuan Tiangong, the sanctum of sages was able to traverse through space and transform between the real and the illusory. However, in the outside world, this ability would be severely limited. With the help of the token, Su Fang easily fused the sanctum of sages together with the sanctum of sages. After which, he drove the sanctum of sages into the Yuan Tiangong. In just 10 breaths of time, the phantom of the Saint Temple appeared in the heavenly realm region of Primordius Heavenly Palace, rapidly transforming into reality. Su Fang walked out of the sanctum of sages, followed by Greyflame High and his 1,000 guards. Inceptive Sage, why did the sanctum of sages appear in the heaven realm dojos? Greyflame High asked curiously. He was currently in the heaven realm, not the deepest region of the Yuan Tiangong. Under the frightening pressure of the sanctum of sages, the dojos of the 10 great prodigies, which had fused together with the illusory heaven realm, appeared one after another. The dojos of the 10 great prodigies of the heaven realm were magnificent, but compared to Su Fang's sanctum of sages, they were no different from ordinary houses beside the royal palace. Chapter 2263. Su Fang used his great perfection stage ability and immediately sensed the location of Xuanxin and Goddess Luo. However, Goddess Luo wasn't there. Su Fang didn't know what kind of dangerous mission she had accepted, and he couldn't help but worry. Xuanxin was preparing to integrate with the heavenly Tao during this period, so he was naturally in the dojo. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One figure after another flew out of the heavenly realm dojo and toward Su Fang. Brother Su Fang, is this your sanctum of sages? It's amazing! Chu Bingyan took a closer look at the sanctum of sages, and a look of envy appeared on his face. TSK, a master god and 1,000 Tao integration cultivators guarding him. As expected of the Holy Sun who stands above all heaven realm prodigies. Qi Mian, Shifeng, and Qian Gang were envious too. Some of them were jealous too. Chu Bingyan said, Brother Su, can you let me stay in your Saint Temple for a few days? Before Su Fang could answer, Song Yanhai said, apart from the saint, everyone else has to pay 100 merit points every day to stay in the Saint Temple. Then forget it. Chu Bingyan touched the tip of his nose and smiled bitterly. Qi Mian snorted. Su Fang, did you show the Saint Temple in the heavenly realm just to show off to the heavenly realm dojos? I want to challenge you. Do you dare to accept my challenge? You think too much. I came to the heavenly realm dojo this time for my Tao companion. Su Fang's purpose was to challenge Xuanxin. Chu Bingyan smiled and said, Qi Mian, if you want to challenge Su Fang, go challenge the 10,000 spell pagoda first. Wait until you pass the 68th floor of the 10,000 spell pagoda before you challenge him. Su Fang had set a new record in the 10,000 spell tower that no one could break. Even the 10,000 spell tower couldn't surpass Su Fang, so what right did he have to challenge Su Fang? Qi Mian snorted and said, You're just a petty person intoxicated by success. I might not be able to surpass you in the 10,000 spell pagoda, but do you think even Diu and Shaozuan can't surpass you? Song Yan Hai shouted coldly, Your Highness Qi Mian, don't forget the hierarchy of the Yuan Tiangong. If you speak rudely again, don't blame me for being impolite. Qi Mian trembled under the pressure of the overgod from the sea of ashen flames. He snorted and no longer dared to make a sound. Su Fang, come and see this young master. Di Yuan's voice rang out from a distant training ground. His voice was filled with a heavenly might that could not be defied. Azure Flame C's eyebrows twitched, but he held himself back in the end. Su Fang replied, Shao Zundiuan, feel free to speak your mind. You are now the Yuan Tiangong's holy son personally conferred by the supreme existence of my race. You have the right to speak to me like this. Then, this young master will speak frankly. Di Yuan's nonchalant voice rang out. Because of you, Luo Xingtian is about to be expelled from the Yuan Tiangong by the punishment hall. Where possible, one should be lenient. This young master will ask him to apologize to you. For this young master's sake, please let him off this time. Su Fang said embarrassedly, This holy son has already clearly stated my conditions to the Luo clan's first elder, Luo Yunchen. I don't want to repeat myself. Di Yuan said indifferently, Su Fang, don't go too far. You can refuse to give face to the Luo clan, but don't tell me you won't even give this young master face? I, Su Fang, only know that I have to fight for my own honor and not rely on others to give it to me. If I give face to Shao Zundiuan this time and let Luo Xingtian off, then who will give face to Su Fang? Su Fang chuckled. After entering the Yuan Tiangong, Luo Xingtian had been targeting Su Fang everywhere and wanted to kill Su Fang. Why didn't anyone give him face at that time? Now, Di Yuan had jumped out and asked Su Fang to give him face. It was really a little ridiculous. Su Fang, I, Di Yuan, formally challenge you. During the 100,000 years of the exam, no matter what test you take, no matter what mission you accept, this young master will crush you. In the end, I will defeat you in one move in the test and make you, the Yuan Tiangong Holy Son, a joke. Di Yuan's provocative voice reverberated in the heavenly realm training hall. This holy son will be waiting for Shao Zundiuan's arrival at any time. Su Fang smiled casually and then flew straight in the direction of Xuanxin Training Hall. During the test in the Yuan Tiangong Training Hall, Su Fang knew that he was definitely not Di Yuan's mat. During the test, although Su Fang repeatedly crushed Di Yuan, it was not his true strength. Even when he challenged the 10,000 spell pagoda, although Su Fang surpassed Di Yuan, if he really fought with Di Yuan, he might not be his mat. However, with the Sanctum of Sages, Su Fang was confident that he could defeat Di Yuan before the 100,000-year test. He could use Di Yuan to boost his reputation. In an instant, he arrived at Xuanxin Training Hall. Xuanxin flew out of the palace. Why are you here? Su Fang said, Your Dao integration is the most important thing. I can only be at ease after you succeed. Xuanxin was very touched by these few words. Let's go to my Sanctum of Sages. Su Fang brought Xuanxin back to the Sanctum of Sages. Xuanxin also had to pay 100 merit points a day to live in the Sanctum of Sages. This was not a small number. However, since it was related to Xuanxin's advancement, Su Fang did not care about anything else. About 100 years later, Xuanxin went into seclusion in the Sanctum of Sages Hall of Spring and Autumn for more than 3,000 years. Finally, with the help of a spirit-responding heaven pill, he successfully integrated with the heavenly Tao. When profound heart fused with the Tao, a phenomenon appeared in the heavenly Tao. A massive ice phoenix phantom appeared, freezing the entire heavenly realm Tao field. Even the divine sun of Primordius' heavenly palace instantly dimmed. Next, Xuanxin should be preparing to break through to the divine venerable realm and advance to the Tao integration realm. After successfully integrating with the heavenly Tao, Xuanxin left the Sanctum of Sages and returned to his training hall. Su Fang also activated the Sanctum of Sages and headed to the deepest part of Yuan Tiangong. Borrowing the might of the Sanctum of Sages, Su Fang was completely stunned by the scene he saw. In front of the Sanctum of Sages, there was a blooming flower floating quietly. It emitted xian guang of various colors, illuminating the void. The flower looked to be only 1,000 feet in size, but in truth it was boundless. It gave Su Fang the feeling that it could fit the entire Yuan Tiangong. The flower had more than 30 petals, and each petal emitted a different xian guang. The aura of the great Tao that it exuded represented the great Tao of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, lightning, time, space, and so on. Each petal represented a supreme great Tao. The space around the flower was filled with a dense aura of primal chaos. The flower of the heavenly Tao. Su Fang thought of his own flower of the heavenly Tao. It was almost identical to the flower before him. However, the flower of the heavenly Tao before him not only had more petals, but the great Tao it contained was also more profound and profound. If the entire Yuan Tiangong is a person, the 4 realms of heaven, earth, black, and yellow would be the divine body of a person. The deepest part of Yuan Tiangong would be the divine aperture of a person, and the flower of the heavenly Tao would be the yang spirit of a god. Who would have thought that my training ground would be the source of the Yuan Tiangong? I can use the Yuan Tiangong's flower of the heavenly Tao to verify my heavenly Tao. Su Fang was enlightened. He walked out of the sanctum of sages and sat down cross-legged in the air above the palace. He continued to comprehend and verify his heavenly Tao. Song Yanhai and the 1000 Tao integration stage guards also walked out of the sanctum of sages to observe the flower of the heavenly Tao. Puff, puff, puff. Who would have thought that after a few glances, some of the weaker guards would spit out mouthfuls of blood, and their auras would become sluggish. Some of the stronger guards could only last for an incense stick's worth of time at most. The flower of the heavenly Tao contained the most profound mysteries of the universe. As Tao integration stage gods, they were not qualified to comprehend the flower of the heavenly Tao due to their low cultivation bases. However, it was this short period of observation that allowed almost every guard to gain a deeper and clearer understanding of the heavenly Tao. Thus, every guard's eyes lit up. After a short rest, they immediately went to observe the flower of the heavenly Tao again. About 3 days later, Song Yanhai couldn't hold on any longer. He staggered and almost fell from the sky. A great opportunity is right in front of me, but I can't enjoy it. My cultivation base is still too low. When Song Yanhai saw Su Fang standing still in the air, he was shocked and astonished. Su Fang cultivates the supreme heavenly Tao and has cultivated an inner world. However, he is only at the 3rd heavenly layer of the Tao fusing realm, yet he can persist for so long. Even I am left in the dust. What level has his inner world reached? Song Yanhai's heart was in turmoil. At this moment, Su Fang had become unfathomable in his heart. He was like an ethereal heavenly Tao that was hard to fathom. Time passed day by day. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. The Tao integration stage guards had rested countless times. Their auras were all sluggish and their eyes were bloodshot. Some of them were even bleeding from their eyes. However, none of them wanted to give up on this rare opportunity. Song Yanhai also rested and recovered time and time again. Then, he continued to comprehend. From Song Yanhai to the Tao integration stage guards, the short 3 years of cultivation was comparable to 3 million years of seclusion. He had even gained something that he couldn't achieve in his entire life. Su Fang spent 3 to 5 days at the shortest and several months at the longest. He even used the divine eye to comprehend and cultivate. He wasn't like Song Yanhai and the others who only comprehended a certain great Tao. Instead, he verified the Yuan Tiangong flower of the heavenly Tao with his own internal world. After verification and deduction, Su Fang's understanding of the heavenly Tao deepened. Although the world tree and yang meridian in the heaven and earth Tao palace didn't improve much, the entire heaven and earth Tao palace became more profound and mysterious. If the world tree and yang meridian were to be hidden in the Tao palace and transformed into an internal world, one could clearly sense that the internal world was in the midst of a major metamorphosis. This metamorphosis would be even more astonishing than the previous metamorphosis of yin and yang. Bang! Su Fang opened his eyes. His eyes shone with excitement. A strong sense of confidence that everything in the world was under his control arose spontaneously. It's about time. It's meaningless to continue. Su Fang stood up. Only then did he realize that his physical body had almost dried up. Even his yang spirit and dermic powers had been severely depleted. Comprehending the heavenly Tao seemed easy, but it had unknowingly consumed Su Fangda's life, blood, primordial spirit, and dermic powers. Chapter 2264. Ascension to the fourth heavenly stage of the Tao integration stage. Su Fang returned to the Sanctum of Sages, and Song Yanhai and the other guards also returned to their respective halls. Then, Su Fang activated the Sanctum of Sages with his holy disciple token and drifted toward the flower of the heavenly Tao. The moment the Sanctum of Sages came into contact with the chaotic aura released by the flower of the heavenly Tao, it instantly became incorporeal. When it reappeared, it was already in an empty space. Borrowing the might of the Sanctum of Sages, Su Fang was able to clearly see everything outside the Sanctum of Sages, and his heart was once again filled with shock. Dense chaotic aura drifted in the air. This chaotic aura was the origin energy of the Yuan Tiangong, and it was superior to the natural spiritual energy of heaven and earth and the power of the world. Streaks of spiritual light flashed in the air, displaying all kinds of strange phenomena. These were the concrete manifestations of the laws of the heavenly Tao. Just from this fleeting glimpse of the celestial phenomenon, one could capture the profound mysteries of the heaven and earth. This is the core of the Yuan Tiangong. In terms of cultivation environment, it's far superior to the heaven transcendence realm. Cultivating here can be said to be a rapid improvement. In the entire Yuan Tiangong, it's impossible to find a better place to cultivate than here. No matter what, I have to protect my identity as the holy disciple. I can't let anyone take it away from me. Su Fang was very excited, but his head didn't heat up. There's no such thing as a free lunch in the world. The supreme expert of the imperial people has given me such an opportunity, and he even went as far as to surpass the emperor's abyss. What's his motive? It's nothing more than nurturing me so that I can enter the celestial mountain and find out the reason for the changes in heaven and earth. If not for this reason, how could such an opportunity fall into the hands of an ascended cultivator like me? I can make use of this opportunity to defy the heavens and ascend to the pinnacle of the world, but I can't let my fate be in the hands of others. Not only do I have to raise my strength as quickly as possible, but I also have to find a chance to recruit as many experts as possible to strengthen my faction. Su Fang entered the Hall of Spring and Autumn. He came to an area where the flow of time was about 30 times faster. Then, he took out the blood crystals and elixirs to quickly recover the huge consumption caused by observing the flower of heavenly Tao. Time flowed like water in the Hall of Spring and Autumn. Every time Su Fang closed his eyes to meditate and cultivate, countless years would pass. Bang! Su Fang suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes seemed as if they contained the boundless universe, and they were deep and filled with mystery. Counting with his fingers, he realized that he had been in the Hall of Spring and Autumn for about 2,000 to 3,000 years. Cultivation knows no time. This saying is indeed true. Su Fang lamented as his silhouette flickered, disappearing from the Hall of Spring and Autumn, appearing right outside of the Sanctum of Sages. Holy Son of Su Fang! A beam of yang spirit from the Tsangyan Sea came one after another. Song Yanhai and the other Tao integration stage gods could use their identity tokens to cultivate in the space outside the Sanctum of Sages. However, in the deepest part of the Yuan Tiangong, there was no natural spiritual energy of heaven and earth, nor was there any power of the world. Instead, there was only the chaotic energy of heaven and earth. Apart from the Tsangyan Sea, who could barely absorb some chaotic energy, the other Tao integration stage guards found it difficult to absorb chaotic energy for cultivation. They could only absorb a small amount at a time, slowly assimilating and refining it. Although their cultivation speed was slow, they were currently cultivating the supreme chaotic energy. This meant that their future achievements would far surpass those of other gods of the same level. Therefore, these guards treasured this opportunity even more. At the same time, they were also grateful to Su Fang. If not for Su Fang, how could they have such good fortune? Holy Son, I have a lot of news. I didn't dare to disturb your cultivation, so I kept it to myself. Should I tell you now? The Zhangyansi sun god asked. His original body had been cultivating all this time. He had separated a beam of yang spirit to deal with some external matters for Su Fang. At the same time, he was also gathering information. As an overgod, he didn't need to do such trivial things. However, he was overjoyed. Naturally, he wanted to get closer to Su Fang. Thank you, Lord. Please wait a moment. Su Fang passed through the array formation and flew out of the Saint Temple. As soon as he sat down in the air, powerful tribulation energy erupted from his divine body. Terrifying tribulation fire burned rapidly. He's going to break through again. Zhangyansi was shocked. When he first met Su Fang was only a puny divine emperor cultivator. How long had it been? When Su Fang challenged the 10,000 spell pagoda, Zhangyansi's original body had also descended and watched from outside the pagoda. At that time, Su Fang had just broken through to the third heavenly layer of the Tao integration stage. Now, he was about to break through the third heavenly layer pinnacle and advance to the fourth heavenly layer. In the chaos, Su Fang controlled the power of the world of yin and yang and began to attack his body together with the tribulation fire. The impurities in the fetal coat seeped out layer by layer and dissipated instantly. Su Fang trembled as the tribulation fire burned fiercely. He was like a divine weapon that was being tempered in the tribulation fire. His divine body was in the process of shattering and advancing. The aura that appeared on his body gradually changed from the third heavenly layer to the fourth heavenly layer, and it became clearer. After many years of accumulation, comprehending the Yuan Tiangong's flower of heavenly Tao, swallowing and fusing with the frost plant, and a large number of pills, he had broken through to another level. Fourth heavenly layer of the Tao integration stage. Feeling the changes in his divine body, Su Fang's face was filled with joy and confidence. Fourth heavenly layer of the Tao integration stage meant that he had entered the mid-stage of the Tao integration stage. He had taken another big step forward in the cultivation of his own world. Releasing his senses, he found that the changes in his divine body were very shocking. His meridians, bones, flesh, and blood were different from before. There were fourth heavenly marks everywhere. The power of the Great Perfection stage also changed quite a bit. The shackles and restrictions that nature had on the physical body and various abilities were weakened once again. The absorption rate of the world tree also increased. The entire world tree gave off a vigorous feeling that it could support the heavens and earth. The Tao palace of heaven and earth became deeper and wider. Looking at the yang energy in the yang meridian, the aura was even more profound. However, there was still some distance before the birth of the 72nd yang meridian. Su Fang was not too disappointed. The birth of the 72nd yang meridian meant that he had entered the 8th transformation. Therefore, this yang meridian was very important. How could it be born so easily? Not only did it require the accumulation of yang energy, but it also required the comprehension of the 9 yang transformations. It also required a fortuitous encounter. Next, I will try my best to break through the 72nd yang meridian. Once I enter the 8th transformation, I can directly go to the Advent Divine Palace and save senior sister Shu Wanjin. Su Fang continued to swallow pills. At the same time, he used the ethereal True Record's ability to transform between reality and illusion to wantonly devour the surrounding chaotic aura. Su Fang possessed the power of the yin-yang world. It was originally a kind of power of the universe and could contain any power in the world. Naturally, This included the power of the Yuan Tiangong's origin. However, Su Fang's cultivation had only just reached the mid-stage of the Dao integration stage. The speed at which he absorbed the chaotic aura was also very slow. In addition, he could not absorb the chaotic aura to cultivate in the hall of spring and autumn. He could only swallow pills and spiritual items. Therefore, it took him a lot of time. However, although the cultivation process was slow, it was of great significance to Su Fang. The continuous absorption of high-level energy would continuously promote the transformation of the power of the yin-yang world. This would lead to a further transformation of the world in his body. Of course, Su Fang's slow speed was only relative. Compared to the Dao integration stage guards, he was many times faster. In fact, he absorbed the chaotic aura faster than the ash flame sea. The total amount of chaotic aura he absorbed was also much greater. While absorbing the chaotic aura and cultivating the world tree, Su Fang also continuously cultivated the 9 Yang 9 transformations. He wanted to enter the 8th transformation as soon as possible. In addition, Su Fang also allowed his natal Dharma treasure to continuously absorb the chaotic aura and nourish his natal Dharma treasure. This kid really makes this old man feel ashamed. When Ash Flame Sea sensed Su Fang's ethereal enlightenment divine power, he was very shocked. At the same time, he also felt very frustrated. Su Fang took out the token and unsealed it. After sensing it, he raised his eyebrows. Before this cultivation, Su Fang had sealed the token to prevent it from being disturbed. However, during this period of time, countless people had transmitted their thoughts through the token and accumulated them in the token. First, he deciphered the information from the Heaven Realm and the Yellow Realm Dao Sanctum. There was nothing particularly important. He had been in the Hall of Spring and Autumn for more than 10,000 years, which was equivalent to 300 to 400 years in the outside world. The Heaven Realm and the Yellow Realm Dao Sanctum would not have changed much. Xuanxin was in seclusion, preparing to advance to the Dao integration stage after integrating with the Heavenly Dao. There was also no news from him. However, there was news from Goddess Luo. She said that she was going to an ancient mystic realm to train, and would take a long time to return. What caught Su Fang's attention was a message from Sun Qi and Chu Bingyan. Not long ago, Di Yuan broke through the 70th level of the 10,000 spell pagoda and broke the record set by Su Fang. This caused a huge sensation in Yuan Tiangong. When he walked out of Yuan Tiangong, Di Yuan openly challenged Su Fang. "I've already reached the 70th level. Su Fang, where are you?" "Childish." Su Fang smiled casually and did not pay attention to Di Yuan. There was also a message from Yuan Tiangong's Punishment Hall and Luo clan's Grand Elder Luo Yunqian. It was obvious that he was here for Luo Xingtian. Su Fang also ignored him. Su Fang's sun spirit returned to the Saint Temple. "Lord Song Yanhai, what did you say?" Song Yanhai said, "Because the saint is in seclusion and has sealed the token, the Luo clan sent me a letter of challenge and asked me to pass it to the saint." Su Fang snorted. "A letter of challenge?" Song Yanhai took out a jade scroll from his right palm. After injecting his magic power, it quickly melted and turned into a light screen. A young figure appeared in it. It was Luo Xingtian. Luo Xingtian was still as domineering as ever. "Su Fang, I challenge you to break into the Advent Palace together. Do you dare?" "Break into the Advent Palace." Su Fang sneered disdainfully. Luo Xingtian was facing a heavy punishment from the Punishment Hall. At the very least, he would be kicked out of Yuan Tiangong. Obviously, he was desperate. However, the Luo clan's power could no longer suppress Su Fang. This was the only way. How could Su Fang agree? Swoosh! Swoosh! In the light screen, Luo Xingtian took out a large number of treasures. There were pills, spiritual items, divine weapons, and jade scrolls. Chapter 2265. The Heavenly Way Chessboard? Among the treasures that Luo Xingtian displayed, there was a divine artifact in the shape of a chessboard. It was almost identical to the Heavenly Way chessboard Su Fang had seen in the Advent God Palace that shackled Shu Wanjin. However, upon closer inspection, he found some clues. That chessboard was not the Heavenly Way chessboard. It was only a pseudo-creation artifact and was far from being as profound as the Heavenly Way chessboard. It should be a replica. Why does the Luo clan have a divine artifact that is so similar to the Heavenly Way chessboard? Although it was only a replica, Su Fang was still shocked. He didn't care about a half-creation divine artifact, but since it was related to Shu Wanjin, he naturally had to pay 120% attention to this half-creation divine artifact. The total value of the treasures that Luo Xingtian took out was more than the entire wealth of an upper-rank lord. However, the only thing that Su Fang valued was this replica of the Heavenly Way chessboard. Luo Xingtian continued on the screen. Of course, it's not to enter the Advent God Palace. It's to enter a damaged temple that has just appeared outside the Advent God Palace. Su Fang raised his eyebrows. A damaged temple? Song Yanhai explained. The Advent God Palace covers an extremely large area. What's revealed outside is only the tip of the iceberg. Even emperors can't fully explore its depth. After the upheaval, ruins and damaged temples have constantly appeared outside the Advent God Palace. The damaged temple that Luo Xingtian mentioned should be a side temple of the Advent God Palace. Luo Xingtian continued on the screen. Let's make another bet. We'll enter this damaged temple to train together. If you win, all the treasures in front of me will belong to you. If you lose, our grudges will be written off. Do you dare? Luo Xingtian pointed at Su Fang and shouted domineeringly. Then, the screen trembled and dissipated into nothingness. Song Yanhai advised, Su Fang's holy son, I heard that the punishment hall has already decided to expel Luo Xingtian from Yuan Tiangong, unless you no longer pursue him. The Advent Shrine is incomparably dangerous. Although the damaged shrine is located at the periphery of the Advent Shrine, no one has ever entered it. Luo Xingtian is also planning to make a last-ditch effort. The saint has no need to accept his challenge. Thank you for your reminder, Lord Song Yanhai. Su Fang understands. Su Fang's yang spirit returned to his original body and continued to absorb the chaotic qi around him, restoring the empty palace of the Tao of heaven and earth. At the same time, Su Fang also sent a ray of yang spirit into the depths of the primordial chaos sacred mirror, releasing his yang power and will. After a while, Shu Wanjin's voice could be heard. Su Fang, you have actually condensed 71 yang meridians and are about to form your 72nd meridian. You are about to reach the 8th transformation and your cultivation level has also reached the 4th heaven of the Tao integration stage, she then sighed with emotion. I didn't expect that the lowly brat from the small world back then is about to catch up with me. Even I have to admire you. Su Fang replied embarrassedly, Isn't it all thanks to senior sister that I have today's achievements? Senior sister, how are you doing in the Advent Shrine? Last time, we joined forces to break through the shackles of the Heavenly Tao chessboard. After we failed, we suffered some injuries and consumed a lot of energy. Recently, we have been recovering. You didn't look for me to ask about this, right? Su Fang told Shu Wanjin about Luo Xingtian's challenge and the divine weapon that was extremely similar to the Heavenly Tao chessboard. A replica of the Heavenly Tao chessboard? That's a bit of a coincidence. Maybe the Luo clan accidentally obtained this treasure. Senior sister, I plan to accept Luo Xingtian's challenge and win that divine weapon. I will definitely be able to figure out some clues from it. This way, I will be more confident in helping senior sister break free from the shackles. I have walked step by step from the periphery of Yuan Tiangong to the inner area. Naturally, I know the dangers within. Especially this kind of ruins that no one has entered before. It is even more dangerous. If you don't have full confidence, you'd better not accept it. If you fall into it and even lose your life, then the loss will outweigh the gain. Senior sister, don't worry. I will be well prepared and will not easily take risk. Su Fang retrieved the Sun Spirit and continued to cultivate in the air. At the same time, he asked Song Yen Hai to send a message to the Luo clan. As long as the Luo clan took out the treasure that Luo Xingtian had displayed, the punishment hall would cancel the punishment on Luo Xingtian. However, after the message was sent out, it was like a stone sinking into the sea. The Luo clan did not respond at all. The Luo clan not only wants to use this challenge to protect Luo Xingtian, they also want to take advantage of this opportunity to eliminate me in one fell swoop. What a good plan! Su Fang probed and figured out the purpose of Luo Xingtian's challenge. If it was really just to protect Luo Xingtian, the Luo clan only needed to lose some treasures. With the foundation of the ancient Shen clan in the ancient god world, losing so many treasures was completely bearable. However, Luo Xingtian used treasures as bait and proposed such a strange challenge. His intention was clear. It seems that, if I want to get the heavenly chessboard replica artifact, I have to think of another way. If there is no other way, I can only make a trip to the Advent Palace. Su Fang thought for a long time and finally made up his mind. Time flew by quickly. About 100 years later, Su Fang's empty divine body finally recovered. He was ready to swallow the spiritual items that he had exchanged in the Dubhe Hall, including a mature prehistoric inflammation pill, and condense the 72nd Yang Meridian in one go. Suddenly buzz. There was a movement in the saint's token. He penetrated the token with his consciousness and found that there was an extra Xian Guang in the token. When his consciousness touched the Xian Guang, a message was immediately interpreted. As the signs of another upheaval are becoming more and more obvious, the Yuan Tiangong has decided to increase the effort of cultivating geniuses and speed up the pace, adjusting the plan of cultivating geniuses. After interpreting the message, Su Fang was shocked. It seems that the upheaval in the celestial worthy mountain is beyond the control of the supreme beings in the myriad worlds. It's difficult to suppress it. The last upheaval had caused the myriad worlds to fall into chaos. Many venerable sovereigns had joined forces to create the Yuan Tiangong in preparation for the final catastrophe. Unexpectedly, there were signs of another upheaval not long after. Once it happened, it meant that the apocalyptic catastrophe had arrived early. Saint Su Fang, before the 100,000-year minor competition, you must complete the following basic task. Otherwise, you will be stripped of your status as a saint. Firstly, you must at least pass the 77th level of the 10,000 spell tower. Secondly, you must complete the white trial once. Thirdly, you must survive in the Heavenly Battle Hall secret zone for 100 years. Fourthly, you must hand in 100 primal spiritual items. Fifthly, you must kill a middle-rank Lord-level demon, Big Goblin, Wicked Path, or Resurrected Powerhouse. From today onwards, the points awarded for all tasks will be doubled. The points spent in the cultivation secret zone in the Yuan Tiangong will be halved. After interpreting the message, Su Fang smiled wryly. Greyflame High had also received the same message. He came to Su Fang. Saint, this is going to be troublesome. I didn't expect that the Yuan Tiangong would increase the basic tasks by so much all of a sudden, Su Fang sighed. The basic tasks for the geniuses in each of the 4 realms, Heaven, Earth, Black, and Yellow, were different. In the first 10,000 years of the minor competition, the basic task was to pass the 10,000 spell tower. In the 100,000-year minor competition, apart from the 10,000 spell tower, the geniuses also had to complete different tasks, as well as various experiences. This time, the Yuan Tiangong had suddenly changed the basic task. The difficulty had increased more than tenfold. Su Fang said, "The first task is to pass the 77th level of the 10,000 spell tower. I'm confident that I can pass it. The fourth task isn't difficult either. The difficult part lies in the second, third, and fifth tasks." The Yuan Tiangong places the many perilous, hopeless, and barren lands in the universe as training grounds for Yuan Tiangong geniuses. According to the degree of danger, they are categorized into 5 different colors: green, yellow, red, white, and black. Green is the lowest, and black is the highest. Some of these training grounds are notoriously perilous places in the universe. There's a slim chance of survival after entering them. Some of them are places used by some ancient protoss and top organizations for their disciples to train. The degree of danger is not high. The green and red training grounds mostly belong to this category. The black smelting trial is something that only sovereign god powerhouses with strength at my level can accomplish. Even so, that is only a possibility. If I enter the black smelting trial, my chances of dying are over 70%. It is impossible for any of the geniuses of Primordius Heavenly Palace to accomplish this. If one doesn't have middle-rank Lord-level abilities like infinite lives, it's a slim chance of survival after entering the white training grounds. The Yuan Tiangong actually gave the Holy Sun such a task. It's really quite difficult. Although the Holy Sun's abilities are extraordinary, but there's also the task of killing evil existences comparable to middle-rank lords. Although it's not as dangerous as the white training grounds, it's still extremely perilous. As for the Battle Heavenly Palace, although it's a little more difficult, it's not to the point of death. Greyflame C shook his head repeatedly. He then rolled out a jade slip and said to Su Fang, "Here are the various major training grounds that I've copied from the Alpha Palace. Please pick one, Holy Sun, so that I can prepare it for you in advance. As for the other tasks, there's no hurry." Su Fang looked through all the training grounds carefully and could not help frowning. As it turned out, the main palace of the Advent God Palace was listed as a black training ground. There were 3 perilous places in the periphery of the Advent God Palace that were listed as white training ground. Among them was the damaged temple that Luo Xingtian had mentioned. The Yuan Tiangong had named this damaged temple the Heavenly Ruin Temple. Luo Xingtian obviously knew that the Yuan Tiangong would increase the difficulty of the mission. That's why he issued a challenge to me and chose the Heavenly Ruin Temple as the location. Su Fang understood immediately. Luo Xingtian obviously knows something about the Heavenly Ruin Temple. He even has a trump card that's guaranteed to win. That's why he dared to issue the challenge. Otherwise, with his current abilities, how could he have the guts to challenge me? For the sake of that Heavenly Dao chessboard replica divine weapon and to complete the white training mission, I have no choice but to make a trip to the Heavenly Ruin Temple. Su Fang smiled coldly and embarrassedly. He then said to Greyflame C, "Sir, please send a message to the Luo tribe. I, Su Fang, accept Luo Xingtian's challenge. However, I must verify it through the Yuan Tiangong Punishment Palace. I'll also decide when to enter the Heavenly Ruin Temple. Also, try to find out all useful information about the Heavenly Ruin Temple." Chapter 2266. The Luo clan quickly responded. The Luo clan readily agreed to Su Fang's conditions. This made Su Fang even more certain that the Luo clan was planning to use the Heaven Ruin Temple to get rid of him. On this day, Su Fang activated the token and the illusion of the divine pivot appeared and turned into a real palace. Su Fang led Song Yanhai and 10 elite guards into the palace. Behind the divine pivot hall, there was a majestic and murderous palace. It was the Yuan Tiangong Punishment Hall. In front of the hall, more than a dozen Luo clan elites were waiting. The leader was the Luo clan's grand elder, Luo Yunchen. The gazes that these people of the Luo race looked at Su Fang were filled with hostility. At the same time, some of them had a gleeful look in their eyes. Su Fang had the Heavenly Secret Life Shrinking Technique, the Heavenly Mystery Solution Abhijna, and the Purple Chi Dharma Spirit. He was very sensitive to all thoughts that threatened him. He could easily see through the thoughts of these people, no matter how deeply they hid it. Luo Yunchen walked over and said condescendingly, "Su Fang, Holy Son, you've really thought it through. Luo Xingtian's challenge to you has been judged by the Punishment Hall. You can't go back on your words. Su Fang asked. Luo Xingtian only said that he wanted to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple. How can we determine who will win? Luo Yunchen said, It's very simple. So, this was an incomplete temple, that primordious heavenly palace called the Heaven Ruin Temple. Before this, a primordious heavenly palace powerhouse had investigated it and determined that it was a place that surpassed the ancient era and was used to imprison all sorts of powerhouses. For some reason, the cultivation level of true gods above the Tao integration realm would be automatically suppressed. At most, they would only be able to exert the strength of a peak Tao integration realm cultivator. The powerhouses of Primordious Heavenly Palace had made some deductions. If a peerless powerhouse that surpassed the Tao integration realm were to forcefully enter, then the entire Heaven Ruin Temple would self-destruct. The eruption of power could even injure an emperor powerhouse. In addition, there weren't many powerful treasures in a prison like this. Therefore, the Yuan Tiangong elites had only investigated the periphery of the temple and didn't go deeper. No one knew what was going on inside the Heaven Ruin Temple. The Heavenly Ruin Temple was listed as a white training ground by Yuan Tiangong. The mission was very simple, which was to enter the temple and obtain the most important treasure, the Prison Suppressing Codex. The matter of the Prison Suppressing Codex was not a secret. It was recorded in the ancient books of some ancient god clans. In ancient times, the human race created many prisons to suppress and seal the ancient demons that were difficult to kill, as well as many powerful existences. The divine artifact used to control the prison was the Prison Suppressing Codex. Later, in the ancient times, a great war broke out between the human race and the demon race. Heaven and earth collapsed, and many powerful beings left the present great world and opened up the myriad world. At the same time, they also brought the prisons that sealed the powerhouses to the myriad world. Even now, many ancient god clans still had such prisons that were specially used to imprison their enemies. Luo Yunchen said, You and Luo Xingtian will enter the Demiurge-destroying temple at the same time. Whoever obtains the Prison Suppressing Codex first will win. Is this fair? Fair. Since Luo Xingtian dared to issue such a challenge, the Luo clan must have made thorough preparations, right? Su Fang snorted and stared at Luo Yunchen as if he could see through him. Luo Yunchen's heart skipped a beat. He was an over-god expert and not an ordinary one. At this moment, under Su Fang's gaze, he actually felt flustered. It was as if all the secrets in his heart were difficult to hide. He quickly calmed himself down and said indifferently, That's right. Luo Xingtian is not only the only genius of our clan to enter the earthly realm training hall, but also the pride of our clan. This time, we took out such a precious treasure to challenge you. Naturally, we are prepared. If you don't dare, you can back out now. Su Fang inexplicably snorted and walked towards the punishment hall. How could Su Fang not see that Luo Yunchen was trying to provoke him? No matter what preparations the Luo clan had made, for the sake of the heavenly chessboard replica and to complete the White Trial mission, he had to make a trip to the Demiurge-destroying temple. As for Luo Xingtian, right now, in my eyes, Luo Xingtian is just an arrogant ant who only knows how to rely on the power of the Luo clan. When I enter the Demiurge-destroying temple, if I have the chance, I will not hesitate to kill him to avenge the dead emperor and the Hanshua precinct lord. However, the Luo clan has a very strong foundation. I cannot be careless. They entered the punishment hall. A punishment hall grand elder appeared. Su Fang and Luo Yunchen signed an agreement and merged their primordial spirit imprints. Then, the Luo clan took out the treasures that they had prepared and handed them to the punishment hall grand elder. Su Fang used his great perfection stage ability to examine each treasure carefully, especially the divine weapon that resembled the heavenly chessboard. In the end, Su Fang confirmed that although the divine weapon's power was not even 1% of the heavenly chessboard's, it could be concluded that it was a replica of the heavenly chessboard. If he could merge it, he would be able to master the array and handprints in the divine weapon. It would be of great help to Shu Wanjin to break out of the shackles of the heavenly chessboard. After both sides signed the agreement, Su Fang left in embarrassment. Luo Yunchen and the other Luo clan experts came to Luo Xingtian's dojo in the earthly realm. All these years, Luo Xingtian had been shackled in the earthly realm dojo by the punishment hall and could not leave. If the Luo clan had not tried to open up all kinds of connections, he would have been expelled from the Yuan Tiangong. The array outside the dojo was lifted. The other Luo clan experts stayed outside while Luo Yunchen entered the inner palace. Luo Xingtian was like a mad beast. He gritted his teeth and said, "Su Fang, this young master will let you taste all the torture in the divine law prison. I will make you suffer a fate worse than death. Shut up." Luo Yunchen's divine light changed instantly, releasing a powerful divine aura that shrouded the palace and isolated it from the outside world. Luo Yunchen changed to a primordial spirit imprint and scolded Luo Xingtian, "The divine law prison is the biggest secret of our clan. How can you reveal it? If an emperor powerhouse senses it and causes this plan to fail, you will be a sinner of our clan. 100 deaths will not be enough to atone for your sins." Luo Xingtian was so frightened that he shut his mouth tightly and did not dare to make a sound. Luo Yunchen continued to transmit his primordial spirit imprint. "The divine law prison has appeared outside the Advent Divine Palace. It is our clan's supreme fortune. If we can get the divine law prison, by then, even the imperial people will have to be wary of our clan. Therefore, the main purpose of entering the divine law prison is to get the Heaven Supervisor token. Killing Su Fang is secondary. Don't be blinded by hatred and lose your sense of priority." Luo Yunchen's primordial spirit imprint reverberated in Luo Xingtian's divine aperture. Luo Xingtian was so shocked that he hurriedly replied, "Yes, great elder." Suddenly, QL11 Luo Yunchen's divine light changed slightly. He took out a rune talisman and a voice came from it, "Great elder, Di Yuan just announced that he is also preparing to enter the divine temple. Qian Gang, a genius from the Heavenly Realm Dojo, has also accepted the mission to train in the divine temple." Luo Yunchen frowned. Luo Xingtian said confidently, "Even if Di Yuan and Qian Gang also enter the divine temple, how can they compete with me? What do you know?" Luo Yunchen reprimanded. "Su Fang, Di Yuan, Qian Gang, and you are all targets of assassination by those evil forces, especially Su Fang and Di Yuan. They are geniuses that the demon race and the resurrected experts want to get rid of at all costs. If the two of them go to the divine temple at the same time, the demon race, the resurrected experts, and the evil forces will all take action. By then, you will be in big trouble." Luo Yunchen was worried, and Luo Xingtian was not as confident as before. Su Fang returned to the Saint Temple in the deepest part of Yuan Tiangong, and soon received news that Di Yuan and Qian Gang were also going to enter the Divine Temple. Di Yuan intends to surpass me in all aspects. Not only does he want to use this method to seize the saint's identity, but he also wants to use this to attack my Tao heart. Di Yuan is talented and comes from a noble background, but unfortunately, he is narrow-minded. My Su Fang? Even if I fail, as long as I am still alive, I will stand up again. I will not collapse. How could my heart of a cultivator be so easily shaken? In the end, the one whose Tao heart will be shaken will definitely be you, Di Yuan. Su Fang no longer paid attention to the outside world. He contacted Xuanxin, Goddess Luo, and Xianlingzi, and then went into seclusion to prepare for the Divine Temple. I will first break through the 72nd Yang Meridian and step into the 8th transformation. This way, my strength will definitely increase greatly, and the power of the Divine Temple will be more confident. Su Fang came to the Hall of Spring and Autumn. The Hall of Spring and Autumn was a huge formation space created by the passage of time. The power of time gathered into a long river that flowed in the formation space. after Su Fang stepped into the long river of time, he appeared in the middle of the long river. From the beginning to the end of the river of time, the flow of time was different. The fastest flow was 100 times faster, which meant that 100 years at the end of the river of time was only a year in the outside world. However, with Su Fang's current strength, he could at most enter a place where time flowed 50 times faster. If he went any deeper, his divine body and primordial spirit would not be able to withstand the erosion of the power of time. Moreover, under the influence of the power of time, he could not absorb any power from the outside world in the long river of time, nor could he communicate with the way of heaven. He could only swallow elixirs and spiritual items to cultivate. Su Fang settled down in the long river of time that flowed 50 times faster. He cast a formation to create a spiritual altar, and then sat down cross-legged. Prehistoric inflammation. He grabbed with his right hand, and the mixed essence saint appeared in his right hand. Then, Su Fang released the power of yin and yang. The mysterious crimson mirror rippled like the surface of a lake, and a fist-sized flame flew out from it. This flame was the prehistoric inflammation that Su Fang had spent 150,000 points to exchange for from the Alpha Hall. Unlike the prehistoric inflammation that Su Fang had subdued, this prehistoric inflammation was dark red in color. Flames surged within it, and it exuded an ancient, desolate aura. It was clearly a prehistoric inflammation that had grown to adulthood. The value of this prehistoric inflammation was astonishing. It was only slightly lower than the divine sun fire. After Su Fang obtained it, he placed it inside the mixed essence saint mirror, allowing it to absorb the ancient mirror's aura. This way, it would be easier to fuse with it. Fusing with the prehistoric inflammation. After I fuse with such a desolate treasure, I will definitely be able to successfully form the 72nd Yang Meridian. Chapter 2267. About 50 years later, Su Fang flew out of the Hall of Spring and Autumn with a helpless look on his face. It turned out that, using the prehistoric inflammation to break through the 72nd Yang Meridian had failed. The prehistoric inflammation contained a shocking amount of fire essence that even surpassed Su Fang's current realm. If it had not been assimilated by the Origin Sacred Mirror's aura, Su Fang would not have been able to fuse it with his yin and yang power. After fusing with most of the prehistoric inflammation, the yang power became more majestic, and the heaven and earth Tao Palace became more vast. The divine sun in the heaven and earth Tao Palace became brighter, and the world tree grew a little. However, the meridian where the 72nd Yang Meridian was located did not show any signs of being born. Su Fang decisively used the remaining prehistoric inflammation to cultivate the fire cloud Tharch physique. At the same time, he also gave a portion of the prehistoric inflammation to himself. In the long river of time, Su Fang spent more than 2,000 years fusing with all the prehistoric inflammation before ending his cultivation. Condensing the 72nd Yang Meridian and entering the 8th transformation is actually so difficult. It seems that just cultivating in seclusion is not enough. I have to go out and search for fortuitous encounters to form a Yang Meridian. Perhaps I can find the opportunity to enter the 8th transformation in the Heaven Ruin Temple. Whoosh! Su Fang controlled his breathing and vented the frustration in his heart. Although he had failed to condense the 72nd Yang Meridian, he was definitely depressed and disappointed. However, he would not be discouraged or waver because of this. Buzz! A rune talisman in his storage ring vibrated. He took out the rune talisman. It turned out that Goddess Luo's voice was transmitted to him. Su Fang, are you going to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple with Luo Xingtian? Su Fang replied, that's right. The Heaven Ruin Temple is imperative. You have to be careful. The Luo clan must be plotting something. It would be strange if the Luo clan is not plotting something. Don't worry, I'll just deal with it when the time comes. I'm afraid things are not as simple as you think. Goddess Luo was very serious. Su Fang's heart skipped a beat. It seems that you know a lot of inside information. Tell me. You probably don't know that the Advent Palace flew out from the celestial Worthy Mountain when the world underwent a metamorphosis. The appearance of the heavenly ruined temple outside the Advent Palace is definitely related to the celestial Worthy Mountain. The celestial Worthy Mountain is the core of the universe. How can something from the celestial Worthy Mountain be simple? As far as I know, the ancestor of the Luo clan was once a disciple of the celestial Exalted. He guarded the divine prison of law in the celestial Exalted Mountain. Goddess Luo spoke tirelessly. She seemed to be very familiar with the secrets of the celestial Worthy Mountain and the ancient Shin race. Su Fang asked in surprise, "Guard the divine prison of law?" The heavenly Tao operates according to its own rules, and no one can violate them. As for the exalted celestial mountain, it was the center of power that controlled the power of the heavenly Tao. It maintained the operation of the heavenly Tao according to the will of the heavenly Tao. The duty of the Luo clan's ancestors in the celestial Worthy Mountain was to guard the divine prison of heaven's law. I'm afraid that the heavenly ruined temple is not as simple as a prison that imprisoned various experts in ancient times. Otherwise, why would Luo Xingtian use such a method to challenge you? Goddess Luo's words shocked Su Fang. After thinking for a while, Su Fang said firmly, "No matter what, I have to make a trip to the heavenly ruined temple. Even if Luo Xingtian has heaven-defying means, he can't do anything to me." Goddess Luo said, "You have that supreme artifact, so you don't have to be afraid of trash like Luo Xingtian. However, you still have to be careful." "I understand. Where are you now?" "I went out to train. I just returned to Yuan Tiangong. I'm quite lucky this time. I have some gains and need to go into seclusion to digest them." "Goddess, you are busy all day. What exactly are you busy with? I can't tell you about my matters now. Otherwise, it will be very disadvantageous for you. When it's time to tell you, I'll tell you everything in full detail. Take care." Goddess Luo's faint voice disappeared. Su Fang sighed in his heart. Goddess Luo was like a mystery that he couldn't figure out. At this moment, Song Yanhai's primordial spirit transmitted over. "Saint Su Fang, the Luo clan is asking when you are going to the heavenly ruined temple? Ignore them." "Yes." There is also news that Yi Luoyang, Chu Bingyan, and other geniuses are also planning to go to the heavenly ruined temple to train. There is also news that outside the Advent Temple, there are experts from the Demon Clan and resurrected experts. Got it. Su Fang raised his eyebrows. It seemed that the training at the heavenly ruined temple this time was a little unusual. All sorts of people had appeared. It's still early. I have to increase my strength as soon as possible. With the help of the prehistoric inflammation, my cultivation level has stabilized at the fourth heaven of the Tao integration realm. It is unlikely that I can advance to the fifth heaven in a short time. I can't use the Origin Sacred Mirror casually. My trump card now is the Destiny Mediating Technique. However, I can't use it often. The most important thing is still the Heavenly Tao appearance. The next important thing is to increase the power of the Heavenly Tao appearance. The various subhalls of the Saint Temple can be used to cultivate the Heavenly Tao appearance and increase my combat strength at the same time. The Heavenly Tao appearance was the manifestation of a Tao integration realm true God's cultivation level and laws. It was a supreme true God's most powerful attack when combined with the Yang God to form the Heavenly Tao appearance. Apart from increasing one's cultivation level, improving the Heavenly Tao appearance also allowed one to continuously integrate the natural energy of heaven and earth that belonged to the same great Tao as the Heavenly Tao appearance. The Demon Clan also had the demonic divine appearance that was similar to the Heavenly Tao appearance. They could even directly devour the Heavenly Tao appearance of a true God to rapidly improve themselves. As Su Fang cultivated the supreme Heavenly Tao, The heavenly Tao appearance that he formed after combining with the heavenly Tao was the appearance tree. There were different branches, and each true body ability could form a heavenly Tao appearance. So far, Su Fang was able to form the 6 appearances of metal, wood, water, fire, earth, and lightning. There were also powerful skills that were similar to the netherworld transformation and the yin-yang transformation. There was also the purple fruit that Su Fang had formed from his own heavenly Tao fortune. Su Fang had never used it before, so he had no idea how powerful it would be. There were many sub-halls in the Saint Temple that were used to cultivate the various great Taos, and it was a good place to cultivate the appearance tree. Su Fang separated his blood clones from his body and entered the Hall of Spring and Autumn to comprehend the life-shrinking art, Heaven's evolution arcane dispelling art, great Tao of time, true art of ethereal quintessence, and other cultivation techniques. His main body, on the other hand, entered the various side halls and began a long, arduous, and boring period of cultivation. There was no death in the sub-halls of the Saint Temple, and there was no one to supervise him. However, he had to face the harsh and cruel environment, and he had to possess the courage to surpass his limits and overcome all obstacles, as well as perseverance. Time flew by. Close to 10,000 years had passed. Greyflame Ocean had been paying attention to Su Fang, who was cultivating in the subhalls. From the initial shock, he felt admiration from the bottom of his heart. Only then did he understand that Su Fang's current achievements were not just due to his talent and luck. More importantly, it was due to his determination and madness. In the 10,000 years, Su Fang entered 13 subhalls to cultivate. On this day, he walked out of one of the subhalls. His aura was weak, and his body was covered in blood. Clearly, he had exhausted a lot of his energy, and he had even lost the blood essence to recover his physical body. Shwa shwa shwa. His clones came out of the Hall of Spring and Autumn one after another, and they were all reduced to blood essence before being sucked into Su Fang's mouth. With a burst of sizzling sound, the wounds on Su Fang's body healed rapidly, and his aura recovered by about 40 to 50%. Then, he entered the Hall of Spring and Autumn. In the River of Time, he devoured pills, spirit items, and blood crystals to recover his energy. Around 3,000 years in the Hall of Spring and Autumn, Su Fang, who had finally recovered to his normal state, walked out of the Hall of Spring and Autumn. Lord Greyflame Ocean. After transmitting his nascent spirit voice to Greyflame Ocean, Su Fang entered the main hall and sat down cross-legged on the throne in the main hall. Greyflame Ocean walked into the main hall. Divine light swept over Su Fang, and he immediately fell into a state of intense shock. At this moment, Su Fang's aura was weak, and he looked no different from an ordinary mortal. However, his eyes had become deeper and deeper. At a closer look, one could see the heavenly Tao phenomenon of the boundless heavens and earth and the shifting of the stars. It was enough to suck one's mind into it. His cultivation base is still at level 4 Tao integration, but he's about to reach the peak. Such a rate of improvement is truly terrifying. That's not the most shocking thing. Right now, even I, an upper-rank Lord-level powerhouse, feel like I can't see through him at all. Looks like his abilities have improved significantly during these 10,000 years of cultivation. That's great. As long as he can keep his position as the Holy Son, I can continue to stay by his side and obtain benefits that other Lord-level powerhouses can't. Greyflame Ocean's eyes suddenly lit up. Su Fang said, "Lord Greyflame Ocean, I'll have to trouble you to inform Luo Xingtian to head to the Heavenly Ruin Temple. The Holy Son's abilities have improved greatly this time. He'll definitely be able to crush Luo Xingtian and complete the trial mission of the Heavenly Ruin Temple easily," Greyflame Ocean said with a smile. There was no lack of flattery in his tone. After Greyflame Ocean left, Su Fang closed his eyes, and many true words appeared in his mind. Fight of the Great Path. After so many years of cultivation, He needed to calm his heart and face the upcoming great challenge. In the cold, desolate void, a huge, boundless palace floated in the void in a crooked manner. The palace was already damaged and incomplete. However, it was precisely this incomplete palace that was grand and majestic. It was boundlessly vast, and it gave people the feeling that it occupied the entire world. It gave off a supreme sense of majesty, and any powerful existence would appear incomparably small before it. They would have to lower their heads before the majesty of the palace. The Advent God Palace. The palace was none other than the Advent God Palace. Around the palace floated endless ruins, dilapidated buildings, and all sorts of strange dust and substances. Some of them were in a state of nothingness and looked like transparent illusions, while others were real. There seemed to be a power that surpassed heaven and earth that fixed the Advent God Palace, as well as the surrounding ruins and substances. It was difficult for even venerable emperors to move it. Southeast of the Advent God Palace, there was a palace that spanned 1,000 miles. Only half of it remained, and the other half was nowhere to be seen. Chapter 2268. In the void outside the Heaven Ruin Temple, there was a huge transboundary starry gate. Not far from the transboundary starry gate, there were a dozen gods sitting cross-legged on a floating object. The one leading them was a great elder of Primordius Heavenly Palace's punishment hall. This person was skinny and wore a tattered Taoist robe. He had a thin, yellow goatee and looked like an ordinary old man. However, his cultivation level was shocking and was even higher than Song Yanhai's. Not far from the punishment hall Grand Elder was Luo Yunxian of the Luo clan. Behind the two of them, Di Yuan, Luo Xingtian, Chu Bingyan, Yi Luoyang, Qian Gang, and other Yuan Tiangong geniuses were all sitting cross-legged on the ground. The guards of these geniuses were guarding the surroundings. In addition, there were hundreds of Yuan Tiangong experts patrolling the Heaven Ruin Temple. The unrivaled powerhouses of Primordius Heavenly Palace had created world-crossing stargates in the various smelting trial lands. Although they were separated by layers of space and time, these Primordius Heavenly Palace powerhouses and peerless geniuses were able to arrive outside of Heaven Ruin Temple in a short period of time. After Su Fang sent a message to Luo Xingtian and decided to start the trial at the Heaven Ruin Temple, Luo Xingtian was the first to arrive at the Heaven Ruin Temple. Di Yuan and the other geniuses also came when they heard the news. The Punishment Hall Grand Elder came as a witness and also to protect the Yuan Tiangong geniuses to prevent any accidents. After the Heaven Ruin Temple appeared, many experts from various star fields and the God Realm entered the Heaven Ruin Temple to search for treasures. Most of them did not return. Those who returned safely only wandered around the periphery and did not dare to go deeper. In the end, they returned empty-handed. Although the Heaven Ruin Temple was dangerous, there were still many experts who came to search for treasures. At this moment, there were countless deities hiding on the floating objects in the distance, watching the battle from afar. These gods were all planning to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple to search for treasures. However, the entrance was guarded by Yuan Tiangong experts, so they could only wait in the distance. Since Su Fang accepted Luo Xingtian's challenge to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple, Yuan Tiangong had sealed off the entire Heaven Ruin Temple, and no one was allowed to enter. This was also because Su Fang had the status of a saint. No matter which trial ground he entered, he had the right to enter first. At this time, Primordius Heavenly Palace was the supreme center of power in the infinite heavens. Although these treasure-seeking deities were dissatisfied with Primordius Heavenly Palace sealing away the Heaven Ruin Temple, none of them dared to say anything. Waited for 3 months. Su Fang Heaven Ruin Temple. Luo Xingtian gritted his teeth. Damn Su Fang. We agreed to enter the Heaven Punishment Temple together, but he still hasn't shown up. How dare he make so many of us wait for him here? Is he playing with me? Chu Bingyan humphed. Su Fang is the saint's son of Primordius Heavenly Palace, someone who stands above all the heavenly realm geniuses of the Tao Right. You won't even be able to maintain your status as an Earth realm genius, so what's wrong with waiting a few days for him? Luo Yang snorted. Su Fang is just a villain. It won't be long before his status as the saint is replaced by Yuan Tiangong. Let's see how arrogant he can be. I thought you could replace Su Fang. Chu Bingyan sneered. Luo Yang snorted and did not say anything. Chu Bingyan looked at Qiangang and asked curiously, Qiangang, us Heavenly Realm experts only need to pass the test of the Red Trial Ground to complete the basic mission. You are a Buddhist cultivator who is indifferent to fame and fortune. Why do you want to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple? Qiangang frowned and said, I'm poor. Chu Bingyan and the others were stunned. Qiangang said, there are many lost Buddhist techniques and supernatural powers in the Heaven Ruin Temple, but I don't have the money to buy them. I can only challenge difficult missions to earn more points. So this time, I came with Su Fang and Yuan Tiangong to join in the fun. Maybe we can find some treasures in the Heaven Ruin Temple. Chu Bingyan laughed. He did not expect that a Buddhist cultivator who was pure of heart and few desires would also be interested in money. While the Yuan Tiangong geniuses were talking, Yuan Tiangong sat there motionlessly like a statue, exuding a kind of transcendent aura. Young Master Di Yuan. Luo Xingtian suddenly transmitted a message to Yuan Tiangong. Yuan Tiangong responded faintly, What's the matter? Many thanks to young Master Di Yuan for pleading on my behalf. Although Su Fang didn't know how to appreciate favors and rejected young Master Di Yuan, I will always remember this favor. Luo Xingtian's tone was full of flattery. Yuan Tiangong raised his eyebrows. Are you trying to provoke me and Su Fang to fight in the Heaven Ruin Temple so that you can reap the benefits? How would I dare? Luo Xingtian smiled embarrassedly. In order to thank you, I want to reveal some secrets of the Heaven Ruin Temple to you. Speak. I just want to remind you that the Heaven Ruin Temple is not an ordinary prison to imprison experts. The dangers inside are no less than those in the Advent Temple. Young Master Di Yuan, remember, after entering the temple, don't look for any treasures first. Instead, try to get the prison suppressing token. It won't be too late to search for treasures after that. Prison suppressing token? It's the token that guards the prison. Without the token, you won't be able to move an inch in the Heaven Ruin Temple. It seems that the Luo clan has a deep understanding of the Heaven Ruin Temple. It seems that Su Fang will definitely lose this time. Yuan Tiangong opened his eyes and swept his sharp gaze over Luo Xingtian. Luo Xingtian smiled. Yuan Tiangong stared at Luo Xingtian. My goal is not the treasures inside, but the prison-suppressing codex to complete this trial mission. Aren't you afraid that I will get the prison-suppressing codex by telling me these things? At that time, both you and Su Fang will fail the mission. A sharp cold light flashed in Luo Xingtian's eyes. My goal is not to get the prison-suppressing codex, but to kill Su Fang. Therefore, there is no conflict with you. This has nothing to do with me. Since you've told me these secrets, I'll remind you that you're no match for Su Fang to begin with. He's not the same as he was in the past. Don't be like you were in the past, going for wool and coming home shorn. Yuan Tiangong snorted, closed his eyes and stopped talking. On a small piece of material far away from the Heaven Ruin Temple, a dozen gods looked over. These gods did not look much different from other people who came to search for treasures. The leader was a young man with a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. His cultivation level was extraordinary, reaching the 7th heaven of the ultimate god realm. Among the many cultivators who came to search for treasures, he was considered extraordinary. The young man's eyes flashed with a faint blood-red light as he swept his gaze over Di Yuan and the other geniuses. Then, he turned around and said in a strange voice, after entering the Heaven Ruin Temple, the first task is to get the Heaven Supervisor token. If you encounter any Yuan Tiangong geniuses, Don't let any of them go. Su Fang Diyuan, the dozen gods all bowed and said, "Yes, my lord." 3 days later, the shadow of a palace appeared in the void and then quickly condensed into a real palace. Its aura was grand and majestic, exuding an unparalleled dominance. Saint Temple. Su Fang flew out of the sanctum of sages, followed closely by Tsang Yanhai, and 1,000 white-robed Tao integration stage super mighty figures. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Gazes filled with astonishment and respect landed on Su Fang's figure. QL11, the Grand Elder of the Luo clan, Luo Yunshan, snorted as his face darkened. Luo Xingtian snorted. A lowly ascended cultivator dares to put on such a grand display in front of the Yuan Tiangong experts and us. He's such a petty person. Chu Bingyan said, if you have the ability, you can directly seize Su Fang's position as the saint and seize the saint temple. Luo Xingtian said, in this heaven-ruined temple smelting trial, I will naturally step on his head and see just what qualifications he has to become the saint son of Primordius Heavenly Palace and stand above young Master Diyuan. Luo Xingtian, you want to step on my head? Su Fang's body swayed, and the strength of a Tao integration stage god was displayed. He ignored the shackles of space and the world and instantly appeared on the material. You've already learned your lesson once. My head, Su Fang, is not that easy to step on. Su Fang looked at Luo Xingtian with disdain. An invisible aura made Luo Xingtian tremble and unable to speak. Su Fang! Diyuan shouted domineeringly and took a step forward. Boom! Their auras collided, and they both took 3 steps back. Only then did Luo Xingtian break free from the terrifying pressure. He looked at Su Fang with eyes full of horror. This lowly ascended cultivator has become so terrifying in just a short period of time. At the same time, the murderous intent in his heart became stronger. I'll let you be arrogant for now. When we enter the heaven-ruined temple, I'll make you wish you were dead. Diyuan glanced at Su Fang. Not bad. Su Fang responded, you're not bad either. Diyuan smiled and couldn't help but smile. I hope you can keep your life in the heaven-ruined temple. Otherwise, I won't be able to find an opponent in the Yuan Tiangong. It'll be too boring. Su Fang said domineeringly, I've never seen young Master Diyuan as an opponent, but a goal to surpass. Now I have a higher goal. Diyuan's eyes flashed with disdain. Arrogant and conceited. Su Fang's meaning was clear. He used to see Diyuan as a goal, but now Diyuan was no longer worthy of being a goal. Since Su Fang's holy son is here, let the trial begin. The great elder of the punishment hall said majestically, attracting everyone's attention. You're all peerless geniuses in the Yuan Tiangong, and you're related to the future of the myriad world. Therefore, I have to remind you. The ruins outside the Advent Temple are all dangerous places. No one has ever entered the heaven-ruined temple to explore, and it's far more dangerous than the other ruins. Therefore, I've decreed that you're not allowed to attack each other in the heaven-ruined temple. The priority is to protect your lives, then the trial and treasure hunting. These runes were personally created by a venerable emperor. If you encounter fatal danger, crush the runes, and you'll be transported out of the heaven-ruined temple. However, that also means you've failed the trial. After speaking, the great elder of the punishment hall rolled out a dozen runes and flew them to Su Fang, Diyuan, and the others. Su Fang kept the runes in his body and flew toward the heaven-ruined temple. The other geniuses followed behind. Chapter 2269. As soon as he stepped into the heaven-ruined temple, countless cries, screams, and laughter converged into a wave, sweeping over with boundless killing intent. It was as if he had entered the most tragic place in the world. If one's Tao heart was not stable and his will was not strong enough, the terrifying sound alone could affect the consciousness of a ultimate God realm expert and even cause his will to collapse. Su Fang's heart skipped a beat and he guarded his mind. The scenery in front of him changed drastically. What he could see with his perfect vision was an endless stretch of ruins. There were also some broken walls and standing statues. The sky was gloomy and the atmosphere in the space was oppressive and suffocating. Dust and debris floated in the space of the world. The shackles of the world were shocking. Even with Su Fang's cultivation of the fourth heaven of Tao Reunion Realm, he felt heavy pressure. After merging with the heavenly way, a true god could even ignore the shackles of time and space. However, he was shackled by the world and felt like a weakling in the heavenly god realm. He looked at the others. Only Diyuan, Chu Bingyan, Qian Gang, and Yi Luoyang were slightly better. Luo Xingtian and the other geniuses below the earth realm were all pale and their divine bodies were trembling. Although they could still bear it, they seemed to be struggling. Su Fang used his perfect vision and activated the purple cloud Dharma spirit at the same time. Purple light flickered in his eyes and the scenery in the distance gradually became clear. He could vaguely see the tall walls. This is only the edge of the inner world of the Heaven Ruin Temple. The prison suppression codex must be in the main palace inside the walls. Su Fangdao walked toward the walls in the distance. Before coming to the Heaven Ruin Temple, Su Fang asked Song Yen Hai to find out everything about the Heaven Ruin Temple. Someone had entered the inner world of the Heaven Ruin Temple before, but they did not enter the space inside the walls. They only searched for treasures at the edge. The real danger was the area inside the walls. However, the edge was not safe either. If one was unlucky, he or she would lose his or her life. Luo Xingtian looked at Su Fang's back and smiled viciously. He then walked toward the ruins on the right. Since Luo Xingtian dares to challenge Su Fang, he must know something about the Heaven Ruin Temple. Following him will be the right choice. Yi Luoyang and the other geniuses followed closely behind Luo Xingtian. Diyuan, Chu Bingyan, and Qian Gang strode forward. Of course, they knew that Luo Xingtian had something to rely on. However, they disdained to be associated with him. These heavenly realm geniuses had their own pride. Under normal circumstances, Su Fang would have been able to reach the tall walls in a few seconds. However, at the edge of the Heavenly Ruins Temple, even Tao integration stage true gods could not merge with the heavenly Tao and travel through the void. They could only fly at a speed similar to divine Emperor true gods. Moreover, the higher the altitude, the more frightening the shackles were. Not only was there the power of the shackles, but there was also the power of the heavenly punishment, which made Su Fang tremble with fear. Su Fangxing tried to control a flying sword. The higher it went, the slower it became. When it reached a height of 100 zhang in the air, a bolt of lightning suddenly appeared out of nowhere and struck the flying sword. In an instant, the flying sword was reduced to ashes. He used his all-seeing eye and saw that the void was filled with heavenly scars, which intertwined to form a huge enchantment. Its power was enough to threaten a peak Lord God. Moreover, there was a mysterious power that suppressed and restrained true gods in the world of the Heavenly Ruins Temple. Su Fang estimated that even Emperor true gods would be suppressed. Su Fang had no choice but to fly slowly, sticking close to the ground. As he continued to go deeper, Su Fang saw traces of battle on the ground. Occasionally, he would see fresh blood and corpses of true gods, indicating that the outer area of the Heavenly Ruins Temple was not very peaceful. He passed by a piece of broken wall. A big tree stood there alone. The tree was only 100 feet tall and its trunk was almost dead. There was only a branch left without any leaves. There was a fist-sized fruit hanging from the branch. It was brownish-red, as if it was condensed from a ball of dried blood. When he used his great perfection ability to sense the fruit, he could sense an astonishing life force and an extremely evil aura from it. There was also a mysterious power that was somewhat similar to destiny. What kind of tree is this? How can it bear a fruit that contains such astonishing life force and evil aura? What is that power that is similar to destiny? Su Fang was surprised. Su Fang did not dare to act rashly. He stopped about 100 feet away from the tree. There were more than a dozen corpses around the tree. Some belonged to true gods, and some belonged to Big Goblin. All of them were dried up, leaving only a piece of skin. From the clothes of these corpses, he could tell that these true gods and Big Goblin had entered the heavenly ruins temple to search for treasures after it appeared. No one knew what they encountered and died here. Su Fang's eyes lit up. This fruit contains such astonishing life force. It can be used to cultivate the blue sky underworld. It can also be used for Gui Gui to devour. At this moment, Diyuan, Chu Bingyan, and Qian Gang caught up from behind. Seeing this strange tree, the three of them were not surprised at all. Qian Gang said, "This blood fruit does not look evil. Buddhist cultivators take it as their duty to purify evil spirits." "They asked me to purify it," Chu Bingyan sneered. "You want to exchange it for merit points, don't you?" Qian Gang said eloquently, "A gentleman loves wealth and obtains it in a proper way. I want to exchange it for Buddhist cultivation techniques and strengthen Buddhism, not for my own greed." Su Fang had never interacted with Qian Gang before. He did not expect this Buddhist cultivator to be so similar to the monk Shangde. He could not help but look at Qian Gang a few more times. Diyuan said calmly, "If you don't want to die, I advise you not to have any ideas about this blood fruit." "Why is that?" Qian Gang looked at Diyuan in surprise. "This tree that is about to wither is called the punishment wood. In ancient times, there was this kind of punishment wood in the prisons that sealed the strong cultivators. Those who were judged guilty would have their blood sucked dry by the punishment wood. The blood fruit you see is called the fruit of sin. It is condensed from the blood of cultivators or Big Goblin. The fruit of sin is useless to gods. Only some evil path and demonic path cultivators are useful. There are also asuras. The fruit of sin is the supreme divine item that asuras cultivate. Ordinary punishment wood is only 3 to 4 feet tall. The tallest one is no more than 10 feet tall. However, this one is more than 10 feet tall. Who knows how many lives it has devoured? If you don't want to die, it's best not to touch it. Even an overgod would find it difficult to deal with this fruit of sin. Moreover, even an overgod's strength would be shackled here. Diyuan's words sent chills down Su Fang and the others' spines. Qian Gang's face turned pale. "Since this thing is called the punishment wood, it is not something evil. I won't purify it anymore." Qian Gang's words attracted another round of mockery from Chu Bingyan. Diyuan and the others continued to advance toward the wall. Su Fang glanced at the punishment wood. Although he was unwilling, there was nothing he could do. Just as he was about to enter the depths of the Heaven Ruin Temple, the Origin Sacred Mirror in the Heaven and Earth Tao Palace suddenly emitted an extremely cold qi. Shu Wanzhen's voice came from it. "Su Fang, you have to find a way to get the fruit of sin and the corpses that have been devoured by the punishment wood." "Senior sister, why are you here?" "The Heaven Ruin Temple is a dangerous place outside the Advent Palace. How can I be at ease when you enter it? After all, I have entered some ruins and relics outside the Advent Palace before. I know many things that ordinary people don't know. I can give you some pointers." Su Fang felt warmth in his heart. "Thank you, senior sister. I once obtained a cultivation note left behind by an expert that surpassed the primordial era in a side hall outside the Advent Palace. In the note, one thing was recorded, and it was about the punishment wood. After the punishment wood devoured the life and blood of gods and Big Goblin, the punishment wood condensed into a fruit of sin that contains life essence and a mysterious power of karma. It can cleanse the karma brought about by killing. Why is it that although the demon race, Big Goblin, and other evil existences can increase their strength quickly, it is difficult for them to reach the peak of the Heaven Tao? It is because karma exists in the unseen world. The more one kills, the greater the shackles and the greater the rejection from the Heaven Tao. Hence, it is difficult for one to reach the peak. This is karma. The punishment fruit can cleanse the karma of evil existences, which means that one can reach the peak in the future. Moreover, this punishment wood is extraordinary. It is actually 30 meters tall. The heaven-ruined temple is indeed not simple. The punishment fruit is condensed from blood and chi. It is even more effective for Azura experts. In that expert's notes, there was once an Azura king who didn't hesitate to pay any price to break into a prison that was used to suppress experts in order to obtain the fruit of sin. In the end, he was suppressed and devoured by the punishment wood. If your Azura god race friend devours such a punishment fruit of sin, his future achievements will be limitless. He may even surpass Senior Azura and reach the peak that Azura has never reached. Su Fong decisively made a decision. Since it is so useful to Azura, we must get this blood fruit no matter what. Then he asked, what are the effects of those corpses? Some effects, but they are not as good as the punishment fruit. Shu Wanjin explained again. According to the expert's note, the gods or big goblin that were killed by the punishment would only have a layer of skin left. They are often made into puppets and used as prison guards. If you combine the skin that was devoured by the punishment wood with a bit of the life essence of the punishment fruit, you can turn into the appearance of the person when they were alive. Not only the appearance, but even the aura will be exactly the same. Even the aura of fate will be changed. Su Fong said happily, there is such a magical effect? Shu Wanjin warned, you must not be careless. The punishment wood is not an ordinary spiritual item. It is a divine wood that can kill experts. Senior sister, you forgot that I have a heaven-defying divine ability that can seize the fortune of heaven and earth, the Heaven's Secret Life Shrinking Technique. Chapter 2270. Fate is my creation, and I control the heavens. If I want something, the heavens must have it. Su Fong activated the Heavenly Secret Life Shrinking Technique. His gaze shrouded the fruit of sin on the condemning tree's branch and the three corpses around it. Whoosh! Poof! A giant hand grabbed at the wood of condemnation and the space around it. The fruit of sin fell from the branch, and the three corpses on the ground also floated up from the ground. They were not corpses, just three shriveled human skins. The condemning tree was suppressed by an invisible force, and it trembled uncontrollably. The entire tree trunk instantly turned blood red, and a terrifying power was brewing. However, under the power of fate, the condemning tree could not unleash any power. In the blink of an eye, Su Fong projected the power of the world and grabbed the fruit of sin and the three human skins, and then absorbed them into his body through his palm. Boom! The condemning tree released a burst of power, and it quickly covered an area of 100 miles. A blood-red face appeared on the tree trunk. There was only one eye on this face, and an ethereal light shot out from the pupil. It seemed to be able to see through fate and karma, and it wanted to kill the person who stole the fruit of sin. Crack! 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 Within the area covered by the power of the condemning tree, some of the originally broken statues, including the gods and the big goblin, started to fall off layer by layer. The statues quickly turned into puppets. They had no aura of life, but they exuded a lofty and murderous aura, and they charged at Su Fong. There were a total of 12 puppets, and the strength of each puppet was at the Tao integration realm. Even an over-god would have to avoid a puppet like that in the outer region of the Heaven Destruction Shrine that was restricted everywhere. Most shocking of all was the single eye on the condemnation tree. The light it emitted contained a terrifying karmic energy. If one was touched by this energy, they would be rejected and shackled by the heavenly Tao no matter where they went. Di Yuan and the others sensed the movement here, and they all looked toward the condemning tree. Obstructed by the divine might of the punishment wood, it was difficult for Di Yuan and the others to sense what was happening here. However, they could guess that Su Fong was in danger. Di Yuan snorted coldly and said, "This young master has already specially reminded them. To think that Su Fong still has designs on the punishment wood. They really don't know the difference between life and death." Qian Geng said, to save or not to save. If Su Fang is willing to take out 10,000 points, I'm willing to take the risk to save him. Chu Bingyan said decisively, "Of course." Who would have thought that at this moment, from under the ruins, puppets would stand up shakily one after another, and their murderous aura would surge to the sky. Di Yuan's expression changed slightly. "If you don't want to stay here, then hurry up and leave." Chu Bingyan hesitantly asked, "What about Su Fang?" "He has a rune talisman personally refined by an Emperor Realm Master, so he can be teleported out at any time. At the very least, his life won't be in danger. He can only blame himself for being too greedy and coveting the condemnation fruit." Di Yuan shouted coldly and went straight into the depths of the heavenly ruin temple. Chu Bingyan and Qian Gang could only follow closely behind him. Heavenly Way Dharma Laksana. The moment the single eye on the punishment wood opened, Su Fang released his Dharma Laksana. Then, he quickly peeled off a yang spirit and merged it with the purple fruit on the Dharma Laksana tree. The purple fruit fell from the branch of the Dharma Laksana tree and turned into a purple figure. It erupted with an astonishing heavenly way luck and blocked in front of Su Fang. Puff! The light released by the single eye on the punishment wood bombarded the purple figure. The power of karma and the heavenly way luck collided silently, setting off a monstrous heavenly wave. The two invisible heavenly way powers melted each other and finally turned into nothing. Su Fang's yang spirit and the Dharma Laksana tree were taken back into his body. Fate is the creation of the world, and I control the heavenly way. If I'm destroyed, everything will be destroyed. Su Fang did not hesitate to use the heavenly way life shrinking technique again. The power of the heavenly way life shrinking technique blinded his fate and made fate hide him. An invisible heavenly way power that could sever fate suddenly set off a shocking wave of qi from Su Fang's body and swept out. The punishment wood and the puppets instantly lost their sense of Su Fang. In fact, Su Fang was still there. However, whether it was the single eye on the punishment wood or the puppets, they could not sense Su Fang's existence. Whoosh! In a flash, Su Fang activated the heaven-piercing rainbow shuttle. Like a golden rainbow, he flew out of the area covered by the heavenly way life shrinking technique and landed thousands of miles away. After putting away the heaven-piercing rainbow shuttle, Su Fang staggered and almost fell to the ground. Then, he spat out a mouthful of blood. Continuously activating the heavenly way life shrinking technique had consumed half of Su Fang's lifespan. Now, he looked to be in his 50s. His hair was white, his face was old, and his breath was weak. "It's been a long time since I've suffered such a great loss." Fortunately, the Dharma tree blocked the karma power released by the punishment wood. Otherwise, even with the heavenly way life shrinking technique, I would not have been able to escape. I would have had to crush the teleportation talisman and leave the heavenly ruin temple. But for Luo to get a fruit of sin, it's all worth it. Su Fang wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. Then, he created a formation around him to isolate him from the outside world. Inside the array formation, he used the great Tao of time to create another array formation. After sitting down inside the array formation, he transformed into the blue sky yellow spring state. Then, he took out the good fortune saint pill as well as the blood crystals he obtained from killing the cold plant. He quickly recovered the life force he had consumed. It would be difficult to recover in a short time. This was the price of using the heavenly way life shrinking technique. About half a year later, outside the heavenly ruin temple, the first elder of the punishment hall, Luo Yunshin, Song Yanhai, Su Fang's 1,000 guards, and other experts from Yuan Tiangong stood guard outside the heavenly ruin temple. Swoosh! Swoosh! The deities who were watching from afar could no longer hold themselves back. They all came to the heavenly ruin temple. At first, there were only a few hundred people. Later, there were more than 10,000 people. The first elder of the punishment hall shouted, "The geniuses from Yuan Tiangong are training in the heavenly ruin temple." The heavenly ruin temple is closed. No one is allowed to enter. Leave now. There was a moment of silence. The crowd broke out into dissatisfied rebuke. The heavenly ruin temple is not the private property of the Yuan Tiangong. Why can those geniuses enter but not us? Now, the resurrected powerhouses are harming the myriad worlds of the universe. Many unsurpassed existences have created primordious heavenly palace, and those with power and influence can take refuge in primordious heavenly palace and primordious heaven world. As for the rest of us, we can only wait to die outside. Now, even the Yuan Tiangong wants to take over the heavenly ruin temple. They've gone too far. If the geniuses from Yuan Tiangong can enter, then we want to go in too. More and more people gathered in front of the heavenly ruin temple. The crowd was agitated. The first elder of the punishment hall looked around coldly and snorted. You people want to enter the heavenly ruin temple to look for treasures? Aren't you afraid of losing your lives inside? Someone in the crowd shouted, The Yuan Tiangong doesn't need to worry about our lives. The crowd followed suit and shouted, Are you trying to rebel? The first elder of the punishment hall said. He released the divine aura of a peak lord-level expert. It enveloped heaven and earth, and the voices in the crowd suddenly stopped. Whoosh! More than a dozen deities broke through the air and came before the first elder of the punishment hall. These deities all had extraordinary cultivation levels. The weakest among them was at the early stage of the path integration realm. The leader was an elderly man with white hair and a youthful face. He was an upper-level lord-level expert. His cultivation level was only slightly lower than the first elder of the punishment hall. The elderly man cupped his fists at the first elder of the punishment hall. The disciples of the Sanskrit want to enter the heavenly ruin temple to gain experience. First elder, you won't stop us, right? Turned out that these people were from the Sanskrit of the ancient god world. The elderly man with white hair and a youthful face leading them was an ancestor-level expert from the Sanskrit. This, the first elder of the punishment hall frowned. Of course, he knew about the feud between the Sanskrit and the Sufang. Sanskrit wanted to enter the heavenly ruin temple now. Their goal was obviously not just to look for treasures. However, Sanskrit was very powerful and had a venerable lord expert. The punishment hall could not refuse them. Suddenly, more than 10 experts flew out from the crowd. The leader was a young man who looked to be about 17 or 18 years old. However, he gave off an indescribable feeling of vicissitudes of life. He was the second grandmaster of the G people. There were more than 10 young men behind him. All of them were handsome and extraordinary. They were the elites of the G people. One of the young men had a square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. He was also very inconspicuous among the disciples of the G people. The second grandmaster of the G people cupped his fists and said, The disciples of the G people also want to enter the heavenly ruin temple to gain experience. First elder, please make it convenient for us. The first elder of the punishment hall frowned again. I can't make the decision on this matter. I have to report it to Venerable Lord Shao. The first elder of the punishment hall thought for a moment. He took out a rune talisman and contacted Venerable Lord Shao Wanting, who was in charge of the punishment of the Yuan Tiangong. Since it's an experience, there's no harm in raising the difficulty. Shao Wanting's majestic voice came from the rune talisman. The first elder of the punishment hall understood Shao Wanting's meaning and immediately let them in. The Sanskrit and the G people were let into the heavenly ruin temple. Then, the adventurers from the various star fields were all let in. Song Yanhai secretly transmitted his thoughts to the first elder of the punishment hall. First elder, there are devil clan, evil experts, and big goblin among these treasure-seeking gods. There are even resurrected experts. If we let them in, won't they be a threat to the holy son of Su Fang, young Master Diuan, and other Yuan Tiangong geniuses? The first elder of the punishment hall replied, These geniuses will have to face these tests sooner or later. They can use the Heavenly Ruin Temple to gain experience. At the edge of the Heavenly Ruin Temple, more than half a year had passed. Su Fang had spent nearly 10 years in the time formation. Under the heaven underworld state, he swallowed elixirs and blood crystals without restraint. The life force that he had consumed gradually recovered by 60 to 70%. On this day, a physical body quickly condensed in the blood. Then, with a flip of his palm, a fist-sized blood fruit appeared in his palm. It was the fruit of sin that he had obtained at great risk. Then, he reached out and grabbed a piece of shriveled human skin. After thinking for a while, Su Fang stripped the blood qi and yin and yang forces and seeped into the fruit of sin. Sizzle! Sizzle! The skin of the fruit of sin immediately emitted a thick blood mist as soon as it touched Su Fang's blood qi. It was quickly merged by the blood qi and yin and yang forces. Chapter 2271. Next, Su Fang turned the insides of his body into blood water and merged with the small portion of the fruit of sin that he had absorbed. In an instant, a majestic life aura surged through Su Fang's body like an erupting mountain torrent, causing his life power to seethe as well. The vital force that he had used to activate the heavenly secret life shrinking technique was recovering at an astonishing speed. At the same time, there was a mysterious power that cleansed Su Fang's physical body, divine apertures, and Tao Palace. Although this power did not improve Su Fang's physical body, divine apertures, and Tao Palace, Su Fang could clearly sense that he was rapidly becoming more intimate with the heavenly way and the world of the Demiurge Flawed Temple. Su Fang had killed countless cultivators, demons, and big goblin from the small world to the myriad world. Every time he killed someone, he would be tainted with a trace of karma. When accumulated, it would become a kind of karma that would affect Su Fang's Tao heart and eventually be rejected by the heavenly way. Because of the supreme providence brought by the purple Qi Dharma spirit, this karma did not affect Su Fang much. However, Su Fang's goal was to reach the pinnacle of cultivation. Any small shackle could cause unpredictable consequences. This time, by swallowing a small portion of the fruit of sin, Su Fang could wash away the karma and break free from the invisible heavenly way shackles. This would have an unexpected effect on his future cultivation. After Su Fang had completely merged with the fruit of sin, he realized that the vital force that he had used up had recovered by another layer. His appearance had also returned to that of a 20-year-old. Although he was not at his peak, there was no major problem. Su Fang was overjoyed. The human skin floating in front of Su Fang automatically unfolded and wrapped around Su Fang like a strange garment. Sizzle! Under the power of the fruit of sin, the human skin quickly merged with Su Fang's skin, causing Su Fang's appearance and vital force to undergo a shocking change. A dozen breaths later, Su Fang had turned into a 24-year-old handsome young man. His vital force was emitted from the great Tao of wood, but his cultivation level was only at the fourth heaven of the godly venerable realm. With such an appearance and such a young age, the previous owner of this human skin must have been a person with great potential and talent from some great force in the universe. However, this person was extremely daring to enter the Demiurge Flawed Temple to search for treasures as a godly venerable realm cultivator. In the end, he was swallowed by the punishment wood, leaving only the human skin. There is such a miraculous wood in the heavens and the earth. Su Fang felt as if he was a completely different person, and couldn't help but feel curious. Then, Su Fang discovered that after fusing with the fruit of sin and the human skin, the world shackles of the heavenly punishment temple no longer existed. After pondering for a moment, Su Fang understood. The punishment wood was the heavenly divine wood in the Demiurge Flawed Temple. After merging with the fruit of sin and the human skin, the heavenly divine palace world treated him as one of its own. Or rather, a puppet. Naturally, there would be no shackles on him. Su Fang was overjoyed. With such an identity, It will be much easier to move around the heavenly divine palace. Suddenly, Su Fang's great perfection stage ability sensed that there was a huge commotion behind him. He looked up and saw more than 100 cultivators being chased by a puppet. The puppet was a demonic bear. Its strength was comparable to a first heaven of the Tao integration stage. There was no sign of life in it, but it exuded a powerful murderous aura. Among the cultivators being chased, there was a middle-aged third heaven of the Tao integration stage expert. Due to the heavenly divine palace's shackles, he could only unleash the strength of a first heaven of the Tao integration stage expert. He looked similar to the demonic bear puppet, but he was being chased by the demonic bear puppet. He was no match for the demonic bear puppet. The other cultivators only cared about running for their lives. Occasionally, some of them would be swept up by the airwaves caused by the battle between the demonic bear and the middle-aged Tao integration stage expert. So many cultivators have entered the heavenly divine palace. It seems that the difficulty of this trial has increased. Su Fang frowned. He put away the blood water and blood dome around him. At the same time, he removed the array formation around him. At this moment, an ancient and sharp sword chi suddenly erupted from the crowd. It had a vicissitude and a domineering aura. It was as if a king's sword had revealed its sharpness. The sword chi tore through the shackles of the world. It carried two people close to the ground and rushed toward Su Fang at the speed of a high-level supreme god. Sensing the sword chi, Su Fang's great perfection stage vision saw the middle-aged man and a young man flying with the help of a flying sword. He raised his eyebrows and looked surprised. Su Fang, who had originally planned to leave, stopped in his tracks. I didn't expect to meet an old friend in the heavenly divine palace. What a coincidence! The middle-aged man looked rugged and mighty. He exuded a domineering aura. He was the tyrant blood venerable who had ascended to the heavens with Su Fang. When he ascended to the god world, Su Fang was chased by Shinja Tianjun in the transformation Supreme Tao sect and was separated from the tyrant blood venerable. Later, in the star billow divine realm, Su Fang saved the tyrant blood venerable once. He also sent Gui Gui to save the tyrant blood venerable's son and gave him a lot of resources. Even the peak supreme grade flying sword he was using now was given to him by Su Fang. The young man next to the tyrant blood venerable was his son who had been saved by Gui Gui. The heavens were so vast that Su Fang thought that he would never meet the tyrant blood venerable again. He didn't expect to meet him in the heavenly divine palace. When the great perfection stage power swept through the tyrant blood venerable, he sensed that the tyrant blood venerable had reached the peak of the 9th heavenly layer divine emperor realm. Although such a speed of improvement wasn't shocking, it was still very shocking. Su Fang nodded. It seems that the resources I gave him, especially this flying sword, helped him a lot. Plus, the speed of ascenders is much faster than gods born in the god world. It's normal for the tyrant blood venerable to have such a cultivation. About an incense stick's worth of time later, the tyrant blood venerable fled with his son to a place not far from Su Fang. His aura had become much weaker. Using a peak supreme grade divine artifact consumed a lot of his energy. Hey! There are puppets coming. Why aren't you running for your life? The tyrant blood venerable's son shouted at Su Fang. Shut up, Ba Fan! The tyrant blood venerable shouted at his son. Then, he staggered and fell to the ground. Then, he pushed his son away. Ba Fan, you go first. I'll stay here. I can hold off the demonic bear puppets for a while. Father! Ba Fan refused to leave. The tyrant blood venerable shouted angrily. Hurry up and leave. Find Su Fang. He's my friend in the great world. He'll definitely take you in and even give you great opportunities. Su Fang was shocked. He didn't expect the tyrant blood venerable and his son to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple to look for him. Ba Fan's eyes were filled with tears. Father! Remember, don't let the Sanskrit and Ji people know that you're looking for Su Fang. Otherwise, you'll definitely die. Hurry up and leave. The tyrant blood venerable sent Ba Fan flying with his divine aura. Then, he sat down cross-legged on the ground and consumed pills to recover. Father, take care. Ba Fan knew that he would be a burden if he stayed. He could only grit his teeth and walk into the depths of the heaven-ruined temple. Why didn't you run? The tyrant blood venerable looked at Su Fong as he recovered. Su Fong rubbed his nose and didn't answer. In less than 5 minutes, the crowd that was being chased by the demonic bear puppets had returned. Only 60 or so people were left. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man fought as he retreated. He looked like a spent force and couldn't stop the demonic bear puppet. QL11 boom. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man crushed a powerful talisman and forced the demonic bear puppets back. I've tried my best. Everyone, run for your lives. The middle-aged man shouted to the crowd. Then, he abandoned the crowd and fled for his life. The demonic bear puppets flew over and landed less than 1,000 feet away from Su Fong. The earth quaked and the mountains trembled. The fleeing adventurers were all knocked off their feet. Roar! The demonic bear puppets unleashed a monstrous murderous aura that enveloped the entire area. It formed a 1,000-foot palm print that blotted out the sky and was about to smash down on the ground. Despair appeared on the faces of the immortals. The tyrant blood venerable roared and ignited his blood energy. He once again activated his flying swords in a last-ditch effort. Su Fong raised his eyebrows and condensed the aura of the fruit of sin. Borrowing the power of the world of yin and yang, he projected it out and enveloped the demonic bear puppet. The demonic bear puppet's empty eyes flashed with fear. Then, they turned around and fled. After a few leaps, they were nowhere to be seen. The palm print that had condensed in the air also quickly dissipated. The aura of the fruit of sin really does have a deterrent effect on puppet. Su Fong nodded inwardly. The tyrant blood venerable, who was preparing to make a last-ditch effort, was instantly stunned. He stood there dumbfounded. The cultivators who were lucky enough to survive were all shocked and surprised. The tyrant blood venerable's strength could only be considered average among these cultivators. However, he was actually able to scare away a demonic bear puppet that was equivalent to a Tao integration stage cultivator. This was truly incredible. The tyrant blood venerable is mighty. The tyrant blood venerable actually repelled the demonic bear puppet. I didn't expect him to be a hidden expert. Everyone discussed animatedly as they looked at the tyrant blood venerable with gratitude and respect. However, there were also some who were unconvinced, especially the few godly venerables. I don't know what kind of luck he has. Every puppet in the Heaven Ruin Holy Temple has a fixed patrol area. The demonic bear puppet must have crossed its territory and had to leave. Su Fong smiled sheepishly when he heard the discussion. The tyrant blood venerable came to his senses and collapsed to the ground. He was still very confused. He secretly sized up Su Fong, but couldn't find any clues. This made him even more confused. The tyrant blood venerable's son, Ba Fan, had returned. When he heard that his father had repelled the demonic bear puppet, Ba Fan was instantly surprised and overjoyed. He looked at the tyrant blood venerable with admiration. Chapter 2272. These cultivators who had come to the Heaven Ruin Temple to search for treasures had suffered such heavy losses not long after entering. They had no choice but to stop and rest. Ba Fan walked over to Su Fong. "Hey, were you scared out of your wits just now?" Su Fong smiled sheepishly and started chatting with Ba Fan. So, these cultivators had formed a temporary team to search for treasures in the Heaven Ruin Temple. As for Supremacy Tyrant Blood and his son, the Star Billow Divine Realm had been plunged into chaos due to the upheavals of heaven and earth. Furthermore, the Big Goblin had gone berserk. Su Fong had risen to fame in the universe, so Supremacy Tyrant Blood decided to head to the Hunyuan Heaven to find Su Fong. He wanted to establish a foothold in the Hunyuan Heaven. The star below Divine Realm and the Hunyuan Heaven were separated by many planes. Supremacy Tyrant Blood was only at the Divine Emperor Realm, so how could he travel to the Hunyuan Heaven? Thus, Supremacy Tyrant Blood returned to his old profession and joined a mercenary team with his son. He planned to head to the Hunyuan Heaven while accepting missions. Now that the Heaven Ruin Temple had appeared, the Tao Integration Stage middle-aged man had recruited experts to search for treasures in the Heaven Ruin Temple. Supremacy Tyrant Blood saw Su Fong from afar outside the Heaven Ruin Temple and was pleasantly surprised. However, he couldn't get close to Su Fong, so he entered the Heaven Ruin Temple to search for Su Fong. When he mentioned Su Fong, Ba Fan's face lit up with admiration. Su Fong was speechless. Ba Fan gradually became familiar with Su Fong and said, "The Heaven Ruin Temple is filled with danger. Why don't you join us to search for treasures? If you're lucky, you might meet Su Fong. I'll put in a good word for you in front of him. If you join him, you'll rise to the top." Seeing Su Fong's hesitation, Ba Fan continued, "Your looks aren't bad, yet you are so dumb. I wonder how you managed to survive until now. This time around, it can be considered your good fortune to have met my father." Su Fong smiled. Venerable Tyrant Blood shouted, "Ba Fan, don't spout nonsense." He then turned to Su Fong and smiled sheepishly. "Ba Fan is still young, please don't take offense. Since you're alone, why don't you come with us?" It turned out that the tyrannical Blood Venerable was suspicious of Su Fong. When Venerable Tyrant Blood was in the outside world, he was a peerless overlord. His eyesight was extraordinary, and he was able to see some clues from Su Fong. Of course, he didn't doubt Su Fong's identity and strength, but he suspected that Su Fong had some kind of treasure that could deter the bear demon puppet. Su Fong cupped his fists and thanked him. "Thank you, Senior." Therefore, Su Fong joined the treasure hunting team. Since Venerable Tyrannical Blood had saved everyone, the Tao Integration Expert announced that Venerable Tyrannical Blood would receive 10% of the treasures they found. He would receive the same treatment as the 3 Hierarch Expert. Venerable Tyrannical Blood had scared away the bear demon puppet, which was very strange. Now that he was valued by the middle-aged Tao Integration Expert, he would receive 10% of the treasures. Naturally, the others would receive less. The 3 Hierarch Experts, as well as other cultivators of similar strength to Venerable Tyrannical Blood, were all extremely jealous and mocked Venerable Tyrannical Blood. Su Fong was invited to join the treasure hunting team by Venerable Tyrannical Blood, and he was also mocked and ridiculed by everyone. Everyone looked at him with extremely unfriendly eyes. After recuperating for about half a year, the group continued into the depths of the Heaven Ruin Temple under the guidance of the middle-aged Tao Integration Expert. Along the way, they encountered more and more dangers. When they passed by a pile of ruins, a black iron chain suddenly shot out from the ruins and dragged the 3 deities into the ruins. After a few miserable screams, there was no more sound. Then, the chain appeared from another direction and wrapped around Ba Fan and the 2 gods beside him. Venerable Tyrannical Blood couldn't save them in time, and just as he was about to fall into despair, the chain suddenly loosened and automatically retracted into the ground. Everyone was surprised and shocked, and they hurriedly left the ruins. While searching for treasures in the ruins, someone triggered something, and a gust of cold wind swept over. Immediately, 7 people collapsed to the ground and their bodies rapidly rotted, eventually turning into pools of blood. They also encountered a bronze man in black armor. He rode a bronze horse and wandered around the ruins, exuding an astonishing murderous aura. Fortunately, the middle-aged Tao Integration Expert discovered this in advance and hurriedly changed direction, leaving the area patrolled by the bronze man. Otherwise, who knew how many more people would have died? What they didn't know was that Su Fong secretly activated the aura of the Fruit of Sin, helping them avoid a lot of trouble along the way. The treasure hunting team was constantly losing members, but they also found a lot of useful treasures. There were damaged ancient magic treasures, some spirit herbs that were rarely seen in the outside world, and even some long-lost cultivation techniques and abilities that were inscribed on stone steels. The Tao integration expert even killed a puppet that wasn't very strong. He obtained a token from the puppet that could release a protective divine aura, removing the shackles of the Heaven Ruin Temple, and even stopping the puppets from attacking him. Venerable Tyrannical Blood obtained many treasures, and the hierarch experts were all envious. They looked at Venerable Tyrannical Blood with greed and murderous intent. Venerable Tyrannical Blood also noticed this. He was very clever and took the initiative to give some treasures to the 3 hierarch experts. However, the hierarch experts didn't buy it and snorted at the treasures that Venerable Tyrannical Blood gave out. They even beat around the bush and asked Venerable Tyrannical Blood to give up the best treasures. One of them even had designs on his peak supreme grade flying sword. Venerable Tyrannical Blood was secretly anxious. He only hoped to find Su Fang as soon as possible. Otherwise, if the middle-aged Tao integration expert wasn't around, the 3 hierarch experts would attack him. Su Fang saw all of this. During the treasure hunt, Su Fang and Ba Fan were the same. They were just bystanders. Ba Fan even joined in the fun with the other experts. Su Fang didn't do anything at all and naturally didn't get any treasures. He was ridiculed by the others from time to time. After losing more than 10 experts, the treasure hunting team finally arrived in front of the huge wall. The wall was thousands of feet high and was made of pitch-black boulders. Every boulder had a profound imprint on it, which allowed the high walls to fuse into one, forming a huge formation. The wall was tall and majestic. It gave off a suffocating pressure and emitted a dark xian guang. Blood constantly seeped out from the cracks in the wall. It was a terrifying sight. The top of the wall was merged with the Heaven Ruin Temple, completely isolating the inside from the outside world. The middle-aged Tao integration expert led the group and advanced along the wall. His idea was very simple. As long as they followed the wall, they would definitely find the door to the Heaven Ruin Temple. About half a month later. Stop right there. 3 cultivators flew toward them. They were more than 10 feet above the ground and looked down at Su Fang and the others. The 3 of them released their sensing abilities and scanned the group over and over again. It was as if they were looking for someone. The cultivation levels of these 3 immortals were astonishing. The weakest one was at the 1st heaven of the Tao integration realm. The strongest one was at the 4th heaven of the Tao integration realm. Su Fang used his perfected ability and sensed the auras of these 3 people. The corners of his mouth curled up in disdain. Why was this so? It turned out that 2 of these 3 experts were obviously from the G people. The other expert at the 4th heaven of the Tao integration realm was from the Sanskrit. Unexpectedly, the G people and the Sanskrit had also sent experts into the Heaven Ruin Temple. Moreover, they had even come together. The Heaven Ruin Temple became even more lively. But one of the G people's experts unfolded a scroll painting. A lifelike figure of Su Fang appeared on it. Supremacy Tyrant Blood's heart trembled when he saw this. However, his expression didn't change at all. QL11 Su Fang touched the tip of his nose. A fierce aura surged in his heart. The G people and the Sanskrit still haven't given up on me. The strongest expert from the Sanskrit shouted coldly, "If anyone has seen this person, tell me his whereabouts. I'll give you a huge reward. If you don't tell me, don't blame me for being rude." The middle-aged Tao integration realm expert hurriedly cupped his fists and said in a trembling voice, "Ever since we entered the Heaven Ruin Temple, we've never seen this person." The divine light of the long-haired expert of the Brahma race swept across everyone. When he saw Su Fang, he didn't stop at all. Finally, he shouted coldly into the air, "It's fine if I don't see this person. However, you have to hand over half of all the treasures you've found." Everyone was in an uproar. The middle-aged Tao integration realm expert gritted his teeth and said, "Sir, you're so overbearing. We've worked so hard to find these treasures, and many of us have died. How can we hand over half of them? Boom! The expert from the Sanskrit suddenly unleashed a burst of divine power. Although it looked like two twisted xian guang, they contained an astonishing amount of heavenly Tao power. Suddenly, they formed two eerie white sword auras and slammed into the middle-aged man's body. Puff! 2 wounds appeared on the middle-aged man's body. Blood spurted out. At the same time, his body was sent crashing into a nearby wall by the huge impact. The wall bounced back, causing him to spit out another mouthful of blood. Now do you understand why we have to hand over half of the treasures? The expert from the Sanskrit said coldly. His cold gaze swept across everyone. Everyone trembled and had no choice but to take out their storage rings. Suddenly, a divine venerable expert suddenly said, "Wait, sir, is the person in the portrait Su Fang?" Swoosh, swoosh. Everyone's eyes were focused on this person. The expert from the Sanskrit said coldly, "Have you seen this person before? Su Fang's name has spread far and wide. How can I not know him?" The divine venerable expert said humbly, "Although I haven't seen this person in the Heaven Ruin Temple, I know of a friend of his. If I can tell you where this person is, will I not have to hand over the treasures? Is that so?" The expert from the Sanskrit raised his eyebrows. "If that's the case, not only will I not take your treasures, I'll even reward you handsomely." "Thank you, sir." The divine venerable expert was overjoyed. He then pointed at the tyrant blood venerable. "This person is Su Fang's friend, and they have an extraordinary relationship. He ascended together with Su Fang from the outside world. As long as we catch him, it won't be difficult to find Su Fang." Swoosh, swoosh. Chapter 2273. The Sanskrit expert and the 2G people's experts looked at Venerable Tyrant Blood. Their eyes were shining brightly. Venerable Tyrant Blood sighed. His eyes were filled with despair. Ba Fan's face was pale and filled with regret. He had already realized that the hierarch expert knew about the relationship between Venerable Tyrant Blood and Su Fang because he had eavesdropped on the conversation between him and Su Fang. Ba Fan originally wanted to show off this matter. He didn't expect that this matter would push his father to his death. The Sanskrit expert shouted domineeringly, "Tell me where Su Fang is and I can spare your life." Venerable Tyrant Blood was only at the deity Emperor realm. Under the pressure of a Tao integration expert, he completely lost the will to resist. His body trembled. He gritted his teeth and said, "This little one did ascend to the divine world with Su Fang. However, what kind of person is Su Fang? How would this little one know where he is?" The Sanskrit expert revealed a sinister smile. "It seems like you are worthless. Then die. Those who are related to Su Fang should all die." Light flashed in his eyes. 2 streams of sword chi intertwined and were about to kill Venerable Tyrant Blood. At this moment, Su Fang suddenly made a move. He projected the divine might of the world in his body outwards. It enveloped the Sanskrit expert and the 2G people's Tao integration experts. Immediately after, Su Fang formed a hand seal and executed the blue sky underworld. His divine body started to bleed. Combined with the divine might of the world, it instantly turned into a world of blood and blood. Such an evil divine ability. "You are Su Fang. You are Su Fang." The Sanskrit expert recognized Su Fang's identity from the yellow sky underworld blood sea. He shouted loudly and was filled with fear. His previous arrogance was now gone. One of the G people's experts shouted, "Su Fang, you have already killed countless experts of the G people. This time, if you dare to kill us, the G people will not rest until you are dead. Do you think this saint will let you G people go?" Su Fang's voice was filled with killing intent. Swish, swish, swish. Blood shadow clones floated out of the roaring blood sea. Huge blood hands also reached out from the sky. These 3 Tao integration experts unleashed their full strength and tried to shatter Su Fang's world. Su Fang had been cultivating in the sanctum of sages for over 10,000 years, and his current strength was already sufficient to slay ordinary overgods. Although the blue sky underworld bloods blue blood sky underworld blood sea, it was not something that the three experts. After nearly half an hour, the blood and chi of a middle-stage Tao integration expert and 2 early-stage Tao integration experts were crazily devoured. Their bloodlines and souls were devoured by the blood hand and the blood shadow doppelganger. In the end, they turned into corpses and sank into the world of the blue sky underworld. Even their yang spirit could not escape. Few the blood sky and the blood water tumbled and quickly condensed into Su Fang, but it was not his original appearance. It was still the handsome and extraordinary divine emperor cultivator. Su Fang, you really are Su Fang. Venerable Tyrant Blood was pleasantly surprised, but he soon realized Su Fang's identity and was about to kowtow when Su Fang used his divine might to stop him. Ba Fan's head buzzed, as if 10,000 bolts of lightning were striking him. He stared at Su Fang in disbelief. He couldn't believe that the God Emperor he called stupid was actually Su Fang. Greetings, holy son of Su Fang. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man took the lead and knelt down to Su Fang. The others followed suit. Those deities who had mocked Su Fang before were all scared witless. They were afraid that Su Fang would take revenge. The hierarch who betrayed Venerable Tyrant Blood was trembling, his teeth grinding against each other. Su Fang looked at him. Before Su Fang could speak, the hierarch kept kowtowing. Please spare my life, holy son of Su Fang. I puff. A fiery light flashed in Su Fang's eyes and transformed into a flaming saber. It slammed into the hierarch's head and instantly incinerated it. Let's go. Su Fang used his divine might to wrap around Venerable Tyrant Blood and Ba Fan. Because he had fused with a small portion of the fruit of sin, the world shackles of the heaven-ruined temple were weakened, allowing him to reach the speed of an ordinary Tao integration stage cultivator. In a flash, he disappeared from everyone's sight. Looking in the direction Su Fang had disappeared, the Tao integration stage cultivator heaved a long sigh of relief. The 2 hierarch cultivators and those who had mocked Su Fang and tried to steal Venerable Tyrant Blood's treasures relaxed and almost collapsed to the ground. Su Fang brought Venerable Tyrant Blood and Ba Fan to a place not far from the entrance. Along the way they encountered many puppets, but they were all intimidated by Su Fang's aura. Venerable Tyrant Blood, how have you been? The human skin on Su Fang's body quickly fell off and returned to his original appearance. Holy son of Su Fang, I didn't expect to be saved by you again. I am ashamed. Venerable Tyrant Blood cupped his fists and bowed. He had Ba Fan kowtow to Su Fang. Su Fang used the power of the world of yin and yang to form a rune talisman and handed it to Venerable Tyrant Blood and Ba Fan. The heaven-ruined temple is extremely dangerous. You should not stay here for long. After you leave, immediately find Lord Song Yen Hai and take out the rune talisman. He will find a way to send you to the heaven realm of the Hunyuan heaven realm. Su Fang, I cannot thank you enough. Venerable Tyrant Blood was extremely grateful, but at the same time, he was extremely ashamed. When Su Fang was in the Transformation Supreme Tao realm, Venerable Tyrant Blood did not help him when he was being chased by Shinja Tianjun. In the divine world, Su Fang had saved him time and time again. How could Venerable Tyrant Blood not feel guilty? Venerable Tyrant Blood, your son is not bad. Su Fang's figure blurred and merged into the world of the heaven-ruined divine world. Venerable Tyrant Blood realized that if Ba Fan had not warned Su Fang to run when they first met, Su Fang would have only attacked the bear demon puppet and left quietly. He would not have continued to follow them. Venerable Tyrant Blood patted Ba Fan's shoulder and said, Fan, your unintentional actions have saved both of us. At the same time, you have won yourself a great future. Father, one day I will become a peerless genius like Su Fang. Ba Fan clenched his fists tightly, his eyes shining brightly. Venerable Tyrant Blood shook his head and said, "In all the worlds, Su Fong is unprecedented. No one can surpass him." The 3 experts from the Sanskrit and the Ji people were killed by Su Fong, causing the experts from the 2 races to frantically search for Su Fong in the ruins at the edge of the heaven-ruined divine palace. However, Su Fong had changed his face and his aura. How could the experts from the 2 races find him? About 3 months later, a middle-aged man with a weathered face came to the front door of the heaven-ruined divine palace. This man was dressed in plain clothes and had a stubble on his beard. He looked like he was down and out. However, this man's strength was extraordinary. He had reached the first heaven of the Tao integration stage. Among the cultivators who had entered the heaven-ruined divine palace to search for treasures, he was definitely one of the strongest. This man was Su Fong, who had used the power of the fruit of sin to change his appearance. After devouring the 3 experts from the Sanskrit and the Ji people, Su Fong had also extracted their memories. He knew that there were many true experts who had entered the heaven-ruined divine palace this time. From their memories, he also knew that the Sanskrit and the Ji people had already found the door to the heaven-ruined divine palace. However, the interior of the heaven-ruined divine palace was extremely dangerous. They had already lost many experts in the front hall, including a 5th heaven of the Tao integration stage mid-stage Tao integration stage expert. Thus, everyone left the front hall and stopped at the square outside the door. They were prepared to gather all the experts and enter the front hall to search for treasures. Even Di Yuan, Luo Xingtian, and the others did not enter the front hall. It was probably because they were not powerful enough. Of course, it could also be because they wanted to preserve their strength. The real treasures were definitely in the main hall. No one wanted to waste their strength in the front hall. From the memories of one of the Ji people's experts, Su Fong learned a shocking piece of news. He knew that the Ji people had sent out a peerless expert this time. They were determined to get Su Fong. He did not know the identity of this expert or how powerful he was. However, from the memories of the Ji people's experts, he could easily kill Su Fong. Su Fong was not in a hurry. He hurried on with his journey. Unfortunately, he was not as lucky as before to encounter a good item like the fruit of sin. He arrived at the square outside the front hall. He saw a huge hall standing between heaven and earth. It was grand and majestic. It was cold and solemn, exuding a terrifying heavenly Tao aura. Su Fong felt as if he was facing the cold and merciless heavenly Tao. He trembled all over. From the square to the door of the main hall there was a long flight of stairs. 2 rows of stone statues stood on both sides of the stairs. Some of them were broken into pieces, while others were lifelike. They exuded a shocking murderous aura. There was a black plaque on the door of the hall. There were 2 golden words engraved on it. It made one's heart skip a beat. These 2 words were very strange. They were like tadpoles. In all the worlds, the words written by the gods contained the meaning of the words. Even if one did not recognize the words, they could still sense the meaning of the word. However, when one tried to sense these 2 golden words, the first thing one would see was blood red. Countless strange and sinister laughter and cries could be faintly heard. It was as if they wanted to suck one's soul in. Su Fong steadied his mind and used his great perfection ability to take a closer look. However, what he saw was a different scene. In the first word, there were cold iron chains and heavy shackles. It was as if they could lock down heaven and earth. QL11 in the second word, there was a huge mountain that stretched across heaven and earth. Su Fong had caught a glimpse of this huge mountain before. It was the Celestial Mountain. Su Fong stared at it for a moment. He felt his spirit wither and did not dare to continue looking. Su Fong was shocked. What are these 2 words? They are so strange. What kind of palace is this? Just the 2 words on the plaque are already so terrifying? Su Fong sent a thought to the Golden Rainbow King's world spirit in his inner world. Golden Rainbow King, you are experienced and knowledgeable. Do you recognize these two words? With the help of Su Fang's eyes, the Golden Rainbow King saw the two words on the plaque. He immediately let out a scream. Damn it! What the hell are these words? I just took a look at them, and I feel like I'm being sucked in and suppressed? Su Fang was surprised and shocked. Heaven's Law. Shu Wanjin's cold and faint voice came out from the ancient mirror. Heaven's Law. Chapter 2274. Divine Prison of Law? Su Fang immediately recalled that Goddess Luo had once told him that the ancestor of the Luo clan was once a disciple of a celestial venerable and guarded the divine prison of law in the celestial venerable mountain. Now that Shu Wanjin had said this, Su Fang could now conclude that the so-called Heaven Ruin Shrine was the divine prison of law. Shu Wanjin continued, In the ruins outside the Advent Shrine, I once obtained many books, notes, and inscriptions, so I have some understanding of the celestial venerable mountain and the divine prison of law. Please speak, senior sister. The divine prison of law is not only a prison to suppress and imprison experts, it also represents the rules of the heavenly Tao and laws. Therefore, the celestial venerable mountain is an extremely important place. Su Fang asked in surprise, The will of the heavenly Tao only exists in the unseen, so how can it set rules and laws? The universe is no different from a country. Without laws, a country will fall into chaos and eventually collapse. It is the same for the heavenly Tao. It will operate according to certain rules, or else the heavenly Tao will collapse and the universe will perish. The celestial venerable mountain controls the power of the heavenly Tao, and it is the center of power of the heavenly Tao. In addition to ordinary gods, the heavenly Tao exists in the unseen, but to emperors or supreme experts who have surpassed emperors, it is not an ethereal existence. Shu Wanjin's words made Su Fang's understanding of the heavenly Tao clearer. It seems that the divine prison of law is well preserved, so there must be powerful treasures inside. Remember, there are two important treasures in the divine prison of law, the prison suppressing codex and the heaven supervisor token. Su Fang asked in surprise, I know about the prison suppressing codex. It is a divine artifact that controls the prison, but what is the heaven supervisor token? The divine prison of law is definitely not an ordinary prison. Think about it. How can the prison used by the celestial venerable mountain to imprison experts be simple? The prison suppressing codex of the divine prison of law is definitely not ordinary. The heaven supervisory token is a supreme divine artifact that monitors the world and maintains the order of the heavenly Tao. Apart from the primordial chaos sacred mirror, the heaven supervisory token is one of the top divine artifacts in the world. Even those creation divine artifacts cannot be compared to it. I'm not too sure about the exact uses of the Prison Suppression Sutra and the Heaven Supervisor token. After all, divine artifacts of such heights far exceed my current cultivation realm. I reckon only heavenly venerables know a little about them. There's no way to know if the divine prison of heaven's law has the Prison Suppression Codex and the Heavenly Supervisor token. That will depend on your luck. Shu Wanjin's words made Su Fang's heart beat rapidly, and his eyes shone with a terrifying light. Luck? I have the supreme luck brought about by the purple cloud magic spirit. Such a powerful magic treasure will definitely belong to my Su Fang. After finishing his conversation with Shu Wanjin, Su Fang came to the square in front of the divine prison of heavenly law. Great Perfection Stage Ability Scroll. The debris piled up in the square had long been cleaned up, revealing the dark ground. Near the passage leading to the door, Di Yuan, Luo Xingtian, Chu Bingyan, Yi Luoyang, Qian Gang, and other Yuan Tiangong geniuses were sitting cross-legged on the ground. Then, there were the Sanskrit G people and other experts from the major forces. At the outermost periphery were the cultivators who had entered the Heaven Ruin Temple to search for treasures. Most of them were itinerant cultivators, and there were not many true experts. Su Fang sat cross-legged on the periphery, and then carefully sized up everyone. Su Fang noticed that Diyuan, Luo Xingtian, and the others all had a token hanging on their waist. It was not a token for Yuan Tiangong, but a token obtained from killing those puppets. With such a token, one would not be attacked by other puppets and could even release a protective divine aura to remove the world shackles of the Heaven Ruin Temple. No, it should be the divine prison of heavenly law. Some of the experts from the Sanskrit and Ji people also had such tokens. Among the experts from the Ji people, Su Fang used his great perfection stage ability to sense some unusual auras. Among them, there were 3 experts from the Ji people. On the surface, their cultivation levels were not very high. They looked like hierarch realm experts, but they gave Su Fang a feeling of fear and trepidation. He used his great perfection stage ability to sense them with all his might. Su Fang's divine light changed instantly. Devil Qi. These 3 experts from the Ji people are all devil cultivators. That young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes looks like he is only at the 7th heaven of hierarch realm, but he is actually unfathomable. Moreover, his devil Qi is deep and pure. He is obviously an expert from the devil world. Unexpectedly, there were devil cultivators among the experts from the Ji people. The Ji people had only sent a dozen people. Among them, there were 3 devil cultivators. It was impossible for the experts from the Ji people not to know. The Ji people are so self-deprecating and colluding with the devil cultivators. They are not far from being exterminated. Su Fang sneered in his heart. Then, Su Fang discovered many more devil cultivators among the rogue cultivators. Including the 3 devil cultivators from the Ji people, there were a total of 12 devil cultivators. The most powerful one was the young man with the square face, thick eyebrows, and big eyes. In addition, Su Fang also sensed that there were powerful experts among the Sanskrit experts. Among them, there was a hunchbacked middle-aged man. On the surface, his cultivation level was only at the 7th heaven of Tao integration stage. However, his true strength could not escape Su Fang's senses. He was actually a middle-level chief god whose strength was about the same as Xing Wuji's. Among the rogue cultivators, Su Fang also discovered some powerful big goblin disguised as cultivators. Su Fang was secretly on guard. Now that all the bad guys have come out, I'm afraid the treasures in the divine prison of heaven's law won't be so easy to obtain. Su Fang's arrival also attracted the attention of many people, especially the experts from the Sanskrit and the Ji people. Their sensing powers swept past Su Fang's body. In the end, they did not discover any clues from Su Fang's body. Thus, no one continued to pay attention to Su Fang. Su Fang sat cross-legged on the ground. He secretly used his all-seeing eye to examine the 2 large golden words on the door of the divine prison of Heaven's Law. Heaven's Law. The first thing he saw when he saw these 2 large words was a boundless blood-red light and a terrifying sound. He continued to sense. Within the word law, he saw chains and shackles. Within the word heaven, he saw the shadow of the celestial worthy mountain. Under Su Fang's mysterious solution of heaven's law, these 2 words contained even deeper mysteries. It was as if the laws and rules of the heavenly Tao were all contained within these 2 words. As long as he fully comprehended these 2 words, he would be able to see through the rules of heaven and earth. He would be able to control the power of heaven's punishment and punish all things in heaven and earth. Gradually, Su Fang sank into the endless mysteries of these 2 words. His heart gave birth to a series of insight. If the country could not, then the people could not. If heaven and earth could not, then all things would cease to exist. From these 2 simple words, Su Fang comprehended the rules of the operation of the supreme heavenly Tao. This caused the world in his body to quietly undergo a mysterious change. In his body, the heavenly Tao, earth Tao, metal, wood, water, fire, earth, thunder, and other laws operated. They gradually became orderly and were no longer as chaotic and disorderly as before. About 3 years later, puff, Su Fong suddenly spat out a mouthful of blood. Blood also flowed out of his eyes. The 2 words on the plaque contained the supreme truths of the heavenly Tao. They were too profound. Even with Su Fong's cultivation base, it was difficult for him to fully comprehend them. After such a long period of comprehension, his life force, primordial spirit power, and dermic powers were greatly depleted. The human skin that he had fused with made him look dejected. At this moment, he looked dispirited and listless, as if he would die at any moment. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Many strange gazes fell on Su Fong. Di Yuan, Chu Bingyan, and the other Yuan Tiangong geniuses, as well as the hunchbacked elite from Sanskrit and the demon race elite who had disguised himself as an elite from the Ji people, all looked at Su Fong. The hunchbacked elite from Sanskrit scoffed. Even I don't dare to look at it. A mere first heaven of the Tao integration realm cultivator wants to comprehend such profound mysteries of the heavenly Tao. You're asking for death. The others also looked at him mockingly. Some of the itinerant cultivators even mocked him. Su Fong took out some supreme-grade elixirs and swallowed them. Then, he secretly shattered his flesh, bones, and meridians, turning them into a pool of blood. He crazily swallowed blood crystals, creation's sacred elixirs, and some other spiritual items to recover. Fortunately, he wasn't injured, so it was relatively easy for him to recover. However, Su Fong deliberately controlled his aura. On the surface, he still looked like he was seriously injured to avoid suspicion. QL11 About 10 years later. There were about 5,000 cultivators gathered in front of the divine prison of heaven's law. Everyone, the hunchbacked elite from Sanskrit, stood up. He slowly released the aura of a late-stage Tao integration realm elite and enveloped everyone. The inside of the Heaven Ruin Temple is extremely dangerous. Anyone who enters will die. The only way is for everyone to work together. The hunchbacked middle-aged man said majestically. Everyone nodded. The hunchbacked middle-aged man continued, "Therefore, I suggest that all the elites above the Tao integration realm join forces and search for treasures together. What do you think?" After a moment of silence, someone in the crowd shouted, "How should we distribute the treasures obtained in the Heaven Ruin Temple? We will work together and kill all the prison-suppressing puppets in the front hall. As for the treasures, we will naturally rely on luck and strength." The hunchbacked middle-aged man's words made the crowd fall silent. Relying on luck and strength to obtain treasures? Who could compete with those Yuan Tiangong geniuses? Especially Di Yuan, the Sanskrit, and the Ji people, who had many elite. The so-called joining forces was just using them as cannon fodder. The people present were not fools. Naturally, no one agreed. The hunchbacked middle-aged man seemed to have expected this. He smiled indifferently. "Since no one agrees to join forces, fine. My tribe is willing to pay a large sum of money to recruit elite. We will treat all the elites equally. The treasures obtained will be distributed according to the amount of contribution. Whoever is willing to join my tribe can come directly." Some Tao integration realm elites were instantly tempted. The hunchbacked middle-aged man continued, "Of course, not everyone is qualified to join the Sanskrit. Your strength must be recognized by me before you are qualified to enter the Heaven Ruin Temple with me to search for treasures." After a moment, "Come down and try." A middle-aged man flew forward. Chapter 2275. I'm willing to work for Sanskrit. However, I've had some misunderstandings with Sanskrit before. Please forgive me. The middle-aged Tao integration expert secretly transmitted his voice to the hunchbacked expert from Sanskrit and told him about how Su Fong had killed the experts from Sanskrit and Ji people. The hunchbacked expert from Sanskrit nodded. "You're not at fault here. As long as you're willing to work for our tribe, I'll forgive you." The middle-aged Tao integration stage cultivator didn't go through any tests either. He simply joined the group of Brahmin tribe elite. Next, more than 20 Tao integration experts joined Sanskrit one after another. Anyone below the third firmament of Tao integration had to display their strength and gain the hunchbacked experts' approval before they were qualified to join. Those above the third firmament could join directly. No one else stepped forward. The hunchbacked expert swept everyone with his divine light. After I enter the front hall, I'll close the doors. Who else wants to join? This is your last chance. If you want to fish in troubled waters, you've made a mistake. After a moment of hesitation, another 5 Tao integration stage powerhouses joined the Brahmin tribe. Those who were not qualified to join were all disappointed. They had missed such a great opportunity. QL 11-inch, I also want to join Sanskrit. Su Fang stood up and flew into the air from the crowd. He landed in front of the hunchbacked expert. You? The hunchbacked expert scanned Su Fang with his sensing power, and a look of surprise flashed across his eyes. Su Fang had been injured when he looked at the plaque. Without thousands of years of secluded cultivation, it was almost impossible for him to recover. Now, Su Fang had actually recovered 70 to 80% of his original appearance. Even the hunchbacked expert was extremely surprised. A mere first firmament of Tao integration wants to join Sanskrit's treasure hunting team? Some of the Tao integration experts who had not been selected by the hunchbacked expert and some who had just joined Sanskrit shook their heads and scoffed at Su Fang. The hunchbacked powerhouse stared at Su Fang. What kind of strength do you have to catch my eye? The middle-aged Tao integration stage super mighty figure had just joined the Sanskrit and was eager to show off. My lord, I'm willing to test this person. The hunchbacked expert nodded and said, All right. The two of them arrived at the empty ruins behind them. If you can last the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, you win. The middle-aged man looked down at Su Fang with a condescending expression. Really? Su Fang sneered as a wave of wood elemental divine might erupted. It merged with heaven and earth, forming a world of its own. As the green Xian Guang surged, countless vines lunged toward the Tao integration stage middle-aged man from all directions like giant pythons. Your strength is not bad. It's a pity that you met me. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man unleashed his metal-type divine might as a series of white sword chi soared into the sky, slicing through the vines and tearing apart Su Fang's world. Can't even withstand a single blow. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man sneered disdainfully, but in the next moment the divine light changed. Black poisonous smoke floated out from the vines that had been sliced apart, forming a world of lethal poison that swept toward the Tao integration stage middle-aged man like a tidal wave. It turned out that Su Fang's wood-type divine might had also been infused with Gui Gui's lethal poison, making his wood-type divine might extremely terrifying. Sizzle! The Tao integration stage middle-aged man's sword chi was shattered and melted by the lethal poison. Even with his third stage Tao integration stage strength, he could not withstand such lethal poison. Whoosh! Su Fang's right arm suddenly reached out and quickly transformed into a thick vine. It snaked toward the Tao integration stage middle-aged man and appeared in front of him in the blink of an eye. The tip of the vine suddenly split open like a blossoming flower. Poisonous blood swirled inside the flower petal like a monster opening its mouth. A powerful devouring power erupted, as if it could even swallow heaven and earth. The Tao integration stage middle-aged man's face was ashen. His body trembled, and he could only close his eyes and wait for death. Enough. You're qualified to join Sanskrit. The hunchbacked powerhouse's majestic voice rang out. Then, a gust of divine might enveloped the Tao integration stage middle-aged man and transported him away. Su Fang's display of strength made everyone's expression change instantly. The way they looked at Su Fang changed instantly. How could they dare to underestimate him? Even Di Yuan and the other Yuan Tiangong geniuses were sizing up Su Fang with astonishment. Su Fang flew back to the square and stood among the Sanskrit treasure hunting team. The hunchbacked powerhouse nodded at Di Yuan and the other geniuses. Young Master Di Yuan and the other Yuan Tiangong geniuses, let's go in together. The hunchbacked powerhouse's tone was very courteous, and there was even a hint of flattery in his tone. This was enough to show the status of Di Yuan and the others, especially Di Yuan. He was from the supreme imperial people, so this middle-rank lord-level powerhouse had no choice but to show sufficient respect. Di Yuan and the others stood up. Luo Xingtian looked at the back of the group for a while. His deep eyes were filled with confusion. The hunchbacked powerhouse smiled coldly and embarrassedly. Young Master Xingtian, are you looking for Su Fang? This person is arrogant and overbearing. He disguised himself and killed the Sanskrit and Ji people's powerhouses for no reason. I'm afraid he won't dare to show himself now. Won't dare to show himself. If that's the case, this trip to the Heavenly Ruin Temple is a little too boring, Di Yuan snorted. Luo Xingtian snorted. I hope he can enter the Tian Can Temple. Let's go to the front hall. The hunchbacked powerhouse from Sanskrit took the lead and stepped onto the steps toward the front hall. Di Yuan and the other Yuan Tiangong geniuses followed closely behind. Then, it was the Ji people and Sanskrit's powerhouses. The cultivators from other organizations were walking at the back. Crack, crack, crack. The stone statues on both sides of the steps suddenly shattered layer by layer. They turned into powerful puppets and charged toward the group. There was no need for the hunchbacked powerhouse, Di Yuan, and the other Yuan Tiangong geniuses to attack. The Sanskrit and Ji people's powerhouses easily dealt with these puppets and smoothly arrived at the front of the hall. Be careful! The hunchbacked powerhouse from Sanskrit shouted. A burst of divine power suddenly exploded and bombarded the hall's door. The dark hall's door slowly opened, revealing a gap that allowed one person to pass through. The hunchbacked powerhouse flashed into the hall, followed by the others. After everyone had entered the hall's door was closed again. The rogue cultivators who wanted to sneak in had to stop in front of the hall's door. The front hall of the Divine Prison of Heaven's Law was extremely spacious. It was about 10 miles wide. The hall was gloomy, making everyone feel as if there was a mountain pressing down on their hearts. The shackles in the hall were 10 times stronger than outside. Apart from those cultivators who had tokens, everyone else was greatly shackled. At most, they would be able to use 60 to 70% of their strength. Moreover, the higher one's cultivation was, the more shocking the shackles would be. It was no wonder that the hunchbacked powerhouse from Sanskrit had suppressed his cultivation. Although they had not encountered any danger for the time being, everyone, including the hunchbacked powerhouse from Sanskrit, had a serious expression. Su Fang mixed in with the crowd. He felt that the power of the fruit of sin was still useful in the hall, but it was not as obvious as outside. Moreover, he could not expose the power of the fruit of sin. Su Fang had no choice but to pretend that he was shackled. Using the power of the Great Perfection Stage, Su Fang could see everything in the hall clearly. In the front hall, there were more than 10 black iron pillars as thick as buckets on both sides. A thick iron chain was wrapped around each of the iron pillars. Mournful cries could be faintly heard from the iron pillars, as if countless vengeful spirits had been locked up. At the front was a massive throne, and in front of the throne was a dark table. On top of the table was a foot-long bronze seal. The table and throne were protected by powerful formations, making it difficult to sense the aura of the bronze seal. However, something that could appear in the divine prison of Heaven's Law was definitely a peerless treasure. The walls of the hall were covered in relief. There were gods with various expressions, demons, and big goblin. They were so lifelike that they seemed like living creatures. Su Fang noticed that there was a side hall to the left and right. There were no other exits or spatial formations. If he wanted to enter the depths of the divine prison of Heaven's Law, he would have to pass through these 2 side halls. Dang, dang, dang. The crisp sound of a bell came from above. It turned out that there was a bronze bell floating in the air above the hall. The sound of the bell contained a strange power of the Yuan spirit. Through the Yuan spirit, one could see black, ethereal sound waves being emitted from the bell. Be careful, that's the soul-locking alarm bell. The hunchbacked powerhouse from Sanskrit shouted to warn everyone. At the same time, a surge of nascent spirit power erupted from his eyes, forming a turbulent nascent spirit wave that swept toward the sound of the bell, shattering the black sound waves. Dang, dang, dang. The sound of the bell became even more urgent. Clatter. Chains slid out from the black iron pillars and swept toward the people in the hall with a terrifying aura that could shackle all things in the world. At the same time, the reliefs on the walls came to life and transformed into puppets. There were more than 1,000 of them, and the weaker ones were at the late-stage Tao integration stage. The strongest ones were at the middle-rank Lord level. You guys block the wardens on the left, and you guys block the wardens on the right. Use your strongest techniques. You only need to hold them off for the time it takes for an incense stick to burn. Once I've broken the formation and obtained the Guardian Imperial Jade Seal on the table, I'll be able to control those puppets. The hunchbacked powerhouse let out a low growl and unleashed the power of a peak 9th Heaven Tao integration stage cultivator. This was the strongest power he could unleash in the divine prison of Heaven's law. Crack, 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 crack. The hunchbacked powerhouse shattered the chains one by one, and he made a beeline for the table. The people who had entered the hall were divided into two groups. They went to block the puppets coming from the left and right sides respectively. Su Fang blended in with the powerhouses on the left side and engaged in an earth-shattering battle with the puppets. These puppets were extremely powerful and very difficult to kill. In addition, the bronze bell above them constantly released the soul-locking alarm bell, causing a violent impact on the cultivator's nascent spirit. There were only a little over 100 cultivators who had entered the hall. Although each of them possessed extraordinary strength and had unleashed their strongest techniques at the same time, they still could not stop the puppets' attacks and people kept dying. Poof! Su Fang was viciously struck by the tail of a giant python puppet and was sent flying.